From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Okay, board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, October 12th, 2 p.m. meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. We'll first hear from County Counsel Margot Raison for a report on actions taken in closed session.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This morning, you met on items 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, and 61 in closed session, but there is no reportable action.
Thank you. We'll begin by considering the consent agenda. All items listed with a CA or C above the items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. The CA represents the consent agenda for the Board of Supervisors, while the C represents the consent agenda for the Kern Sanitation Authority. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the public wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. Members of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. Members of the public may also comment on any closed session item. At this time, I'll read the consent agenda item numbers for the Board of Supervisors agenda, and that is items 5 through 9 on page 4, 11 through 17 on page 5, 18 through 23 on page 6, 24 through 31 on page 7, 32 through 38 on page 8, and lastly, items 39 through 46 on page 9. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak on the Board of Supervisors consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, would any members of the board like an item removed for discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Mr. Chairman, we also need to adjourn as the board and reconvene as Kern Sanitation Authority. Can that be included in the motion?
Yes, thank you. Good catch. Right, I'm telling you, just messing up today.
Same motion.
All right. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, we're now sitting as the Kern Sanitation Authority and we'll consider the consent agenda, which includes item C1. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak regarding the Kern Sanitation Authority's consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda and adjourn as the Kern Sanitation Authority and reconvene as the Kern County Board of Supervisors.
So moved.
Is there a second? Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, we have now reconvened as the Kern County Board of Supervisors and will now consider item number 2, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, may ask questions for clarification, make referrals to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name before making your presentation. Is there anyone that would like to address the board under public presentation?
Good afternoon. My name is Eddie Lane, E-D-D-Y-L-A-I-N-E, and I'm representing the Sierra Club. Today, I and others are asking for the board action requested in our call to fairness recommendations that we submitted on October 4th. We're asking the board to be proactive, forward-looking, Major inequities exist in Kern County's ongoing funding for parks among our 5 supervisorial districts. These are documented in a 2021 fiscal year funding breakout provided by County Council based upon a California Public Records Act request and provided to Mr. Alsop and Mr. Hill. A request for information from the 2 previous years was denied. Such information ought to be made available to the public, along with answers to other funding issues requested. Our call to fairness does not take away funding from any supervisorial district. Rather, this is a request that the board allocate ongoing operational funding to parks fairly. If this requires planning for new regional parks, which would serve North Kern County, Arvin-Lamont, the mountains or the desert, then such planning should begin. With regard to the $10 million in American Rescue Plan funding, we're asking that these funds be allocated on a per-district basis with opportunities for community involvement in decision-making regarding the use of that $2 million per district. Also, the city's Wi-Fi funding is for households, not for parks. Again, let each supervisor decide about his or her $2 million. And if the city of Bakersfield can allocate $3 million of rescue plan funding directly for parks, then why can't Kern County allocate $3 million or more for parks? Let me be clear. As an advocate for Hart Park, the primary issues in Hart Park are not money issues. They're management issues. Off-road vehicles degrading the hills, illegal trash, fires, graffiti on trees, and considerably recent cut brush on the multi-use trail constituting a fire hazard. Common sense law enforcement is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Perez, did you?
I just wanted to ask Ryan why Mike's district has more than double of mine. I'm just curious if this is true, and probably not the place to talk about it, but I have some questions about this that I'd like to talk to you about. Thanks, Ryan. And Eddie, thank you.
Okay, can we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon, Emma de la Rosa, Policy Advocate with Leadership Council. In addition to Eddie's recommendations, we also would like to continue to push for the per capita funding to be used for the local parks rather than for Hart Park. We've mentioned it before, the state offers a regional park grant that could be used for Hart Park, and it does not require that match to come from the county. We believe that using the per capita funding, which is entitlement funding, to come directly to local parks is a financially sound direction to take, right? Since the county does not have to offer any type of match if it's used in disadvantaged areas. I'd also like to thank Mr. Zervis for reaching out in regards to the parks, in regard to the request to create a park in Fuller Acres. That community does not have a park or any type of green space, and so we look forward to hopefully using the per capita funding for our local park in Fuller Acres. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Briel, B-R-I-E-L. And I am here to speak about the importance of recreation, that our underserved communities are not getting their fair share of funding for their parks compared to other areas in the more well-to-do areas. I ride the Parkway bicycle path, multi-use path, and I am noticing just terrible degradation of the plants and the animals that would be there if there was water. And as a citizen, I've been here about 20 years, and when I came here, there was water in the river, and now there's none. And I really have seen how much it's degraded. And I know that our county prides itself that it's the right place to live. And I think we're underserving our taxpayers and our citizens by not providing equal amounts of recreational opportunities and preserving the recreation that we have. We are really fortunate to have the Parkway. It's a wonderful resource for exercise, and I appreciate it every time I ride. I really hope that you'll take a close look at what Mr. Lane has pointed out about the really shocking discrepancies of the funding of funds for the different supervisory districts. This money needs to be equally distributed. Also, it's extremely important that you utilize the citizens who are so passionate about their community and listen to their feedback and not just go on administrative feedback from the various administrators who are doing as best a job as they can. But what I do think is happening, having participated in a number of the Parks and Recreation meetings, is I don't think they're reaching out enough to the citizens to find out what the citizens want to see in their parks. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to address some of these concerns, and thank you for the hard job that you do.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
My name is Carol Lair, L-A-I-R. I don't understand all the ins and outs about having Wi-Fi at Hart Park, but back in the beginning, there were a number of public meetings where input was, asked from the public, what do you want to see at the park? And a lot of the concerns were about restrooms and not enough trash cans and the littering problem. I never once ever heard anybody say, gee, I want Wi-Fi at the park. And the park visitors that I've talked to, they just laugh. They think it's a silly idea, frankly. So that's my input about Wi-Fi.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please? Okay, seeing none, the board will now consider item number 3, board member announcements or reports. Are there any comments from the board? Okay, we will now consider item number 4 under Planning and Natural Resources. That is a request of Aratina Solar Project by 64NB8ME LLC to change various permitted uses for the construction and operation of 5 solar photovoltaic power generating facilities that would generate a combined total of 530 megawatts of renewable electrical energy and 600 megawatts of energy storage on 2,554 acres of privately owned land in the vicinity of the unincorporated communities of Boron and Desert Lake, north of Edwards Air Force Base boundary and west of the San Bernardino County line in unincorporated Kern County. And for that, I will turn to our director, Lorelei Oviatt.
Thank you. I'm here today, Chairman Peters, members of the board, with Craig Murphy, my assistant director. As you note, the location of this project, this is the Aratina Solar Project by 8 Minute Energy. The original Aratina Solar Project, as proposed in 2020, included the development of 600 megawatts of renewable energy and 5 separate solar sites encompassing more than 2,600 acres of land. So I believe that Mr. Murphy is showing you the original proposal that was made by the applicant. The applicant did request that we move forward with this project, so we circulated a notice of preparation in August of 2020. We received many comments from the community that the design of the solar project would be too directly adjacent to the communities of Boron and Desert Lake, as shown on the figure on this overhead. The department had continued to let the applicant know that we would not support this design. They were insistent that we send out the notice of preparation. At that point, the department sent a formal letter to the applicant that noted that the design, as proposed, changed the surrounding characteristics of the community too much, and this design would not be recommended by this department. Based on this letter and these concerns, the applicant revised the proposal. If we can have the next slide, by removing more than 300 acres of the project area near the communities and siting the development approximately half a mile back from the communities of Boron and Desert Lake. They did submit revised conditional use permit applications, which then formalized that this is the request they were making, and a new notice of preparation was circulated in February 2021 of this year with this revised design.
This is the project that is before you for consideration today. It's 5 separate photovoltaic solar generating sites on 2,317 acres of privately owned land. It would generate a combined total of approximately 530 megawatts of renewable energy. And the applicant is committed to building 250 megawatt hours of energy storage, and the project would be able to be built out up to 600 megawatt hours of energy storage. The proposed project is based on this 400 megawatts of solar energy, our recommendation, and the 250 minimum megawatt hours of energy storage. The actual development footprint of where the solar panels and supporting infrastructure goes would actually be on 2,317 acres. And the rest is before you only because there are zone changes for entire parcels, since the department would prefer not to have split zoning on these parcels, and they are all owned by the applicant. The nearest sensitive receptors to the project development with this design are 520 feet north of the Site 3 boundary across 20 Mule Team Road. If Mr. Murphy could point out what is 20 Mule Team Road on there? In the community of Desert Lake. So there's 2 communities here, Desert Lake, where Mr. Murphy is pointing, and the unincorporated community of Boron. In Boron, the nearest sensitive receptors are single-family residences located approximately 1/3 mile north of the Site 2 conditional use permit boundary across Southwest Lee Street. The closest school is the West Boron Elementary School, 1/3 of a mile north of Site 3, and the Boron Recreational Park is 1/2 mile northeast of Site 2. There are a number of actions that are being proposed, and their complete list is shown on pages 7 and 8, but I want to give you a summary of what you're being asked to consider today. There are 5 zone change cases from A1, which is limited agriculture, and R1, which is residential zone districts, to A, exclusive ag. So A1 to A on approximately 1,854.32 acres, and then R1 to A on approximately 79.6 acres. The rest of the property is zoned appropriately either as A or industrial. 6 conditional use permits to allow for the construction and operation of 5 separate solar photovoltaic electrical generating facilities, 6 general plan amendments to the circulation element of the Kern County General Plan to eliminate section and midsection line reservations, not roadways, but just the reservations that would be necessary to implement, that would no longer be necessary if this project was implemented. The Kern County Public Works Department has reviewed these requested circulation element amendments, and it's included in the recommendation that they concur. Once again, on page 7 and 8 of the staff report, of your original staff report, is a comprehensive list of all of these details. So this project, if authorized, would construct a commercial scale solar photovoltaic power generating facility and the associated infrastructure for all 5 sites totaling 530 megawatts, plus the 250 megawatt hour at the beginning battery storage up to 600 megawatt hours, and there would also be an operation and maintenance building. Construction and operations of the project will be accessed from State Route 58, which runs east-west. Construction traffic would also access it from Gephardt Road, Borax Road, Boron Avenue, and 20 Mule Team Road. It's expected to average 570 workers a year for construction. The on-site construction workforce is expected to average 570 workers with a peak of 1,000 individuals. It should take 12 to 18 months to construct this size project. Once constructed, it would require up to 25 full-time equivalent personnel. An environmental impact report was done for this project. Pages 12 through 21 of your staff report details the notification. The notice of preparation was circulated twice, once with the original design requested by the applicant and the second by the amended design. As you know, your board receives all of these documents, starting with the notice of preparation. You received the draft EIR. You received the response to comments. So you have been fully informed throughout the entire process of the information in the environmental impact report. While most of the project impacts can be reduced to less than significant levels with the required mitigations, because of the cumulative impacts and other impacts of the number of solar photovoltaic projects we have in the eastern Kern area, there are some effects that would remain significant and unavoidable. Project and cumulative impacts to aesthetics, project and cumulative impacts to air quality associated with the temporary construction activities, cumulative impacts to biological resources for loss of foraging and nesting, cumulative impacts related to hazards and hazardous materials related to the installation and maintenance of associated infrastructure, cumulative impacts to wildfire due to installation of solar panels in a project's rural location. As we note, environmental impacts reports look at the worst case scenario. They are not decision documents, they are disclosure documents, and they provide all of the range of information for your board to consider. However, the 70 proposed mitigation measures are mandatory to impose. The proposed mitigation measure monitoring program has been attached as Exhibit C for your review and consideration, along with the recommended findings for Exhibit A, 15091 findings of fact, and Exhibit B, 15093 statement of overriding considerations. I'd like to touch on some of the mitigation measures that have been imposed on this project due to its location. There is no way to mitigate the complete aesthetics of a solar project. It will irrevocably change the characteristic of the visual view of a vacant area, and in this case, an area that has some industrial use, since there is the U.S. Borax mine on one end of Boron, and then adjacent to this project is the railroad, which also has some industrial offloading and a few issues. But the vast majority of this land is desert landscape with Joshua trees. The issue is how to fully mitigate the potential dust that could be kicked up during construction or during a windstorm. After construction, this project will be stabilized with the mitigation measures, but to ensure that the communities are even further protected, based on a report done by the Antelope Valley Dust Busters, which is a group that's been working in the Antelope Valley for a long time with the various air pollution control districts, including ours, we identified that a 6-foot barrier fence, this is not a wall, it is a barrier fence, according to the AV Dust Busters who have done actual experimentation and use of this will further mitigate any additional dust that is generated by this project. In high wind, such as we had yesterday, there is nothing that will mitigate dust. The solar projects are stabilized. The dust that was kicked up yesterday in the desert came from vacant properties. They came from a construction project on Highway 14 where Caltrans has a number of unmitigated areas. And the solar projects themselves are highly regulated by the East Kern Air Pollution Control District. If your board has questions, we do have the manager of the East Kern Air Pollution Control District here today, can answer questions about the commercial solar permit that is required. This is a special permit that's required of large-scale solar projects. It's actually not required here in the Valley. And he can go into detail about the monitoring, the penalties, and the other stabilization. The mitigation measures that have been include a comprehensive dust control mitigation plan during construction. We do not allow them to grade 2,000 acres all at once. We don't even allow them to grade 40 acres at once. They have to put the panels in before they can grade larger portions so that we can ensure that they are stabilizing it as they go. They are required to use all dust suppression, and after construction, they're required to use other types of uses such as mulching along disturbed areas along the outside of the panels during the setbacks. They will be required to make sure that the setback areas where they cannot build are also stabilized by not removing the vegetation. If the vegetation is removed through some other natural course, the applicant owns that property, they will be required to maintain that dust control. The
the project conditions are included all in the attachments that you have received. And I would like to note a couple of other mitigation measures that we have included in the addendum. You have received a very large addendum. The majority of this addendum is the petitions and comments, which I'll address in a minute. But also included in this is some additional changes to conditions, changes to mitigation measures. So this is a change to mitigation measure 4.3-2 and 4.3-4. So on 4.3-2, as regards to air quality, for the life of the project, the applicant will be required to have 2 signs. We will look at the location to make sure that they are accessible to the community. They will have the name, phone number, address, project name, telephone number for a designated fugitive dust emissions monitor, and if the applicant wishes to have a complaint hotline. But in addition, it will have the telephone number and the website for the East Kern Air District's complaint line, such that anyone who happens to have questions about dust control or sees dust leaving the site, which is the point here. Dust can go up and down on this site, but it's not allowed to leave the site. That's part of the dust control. So they could complain. The East Kern Air Pollution Control District has an aggressive and fully staffed complaint system where they will come out, they will monitor, and that's part of their commercial. The second sign, which these could all be on the same sign, the other sign will be for graffiti removal. So we are requesting that the applicant retain an on-call graffiti removal entity that as soon as they get a notice that there's graffiti on this barrier, that within 48 hours it must be removed. In addition, they are to let the planning department know by email that they have received this complaint so that we can monitor it. The enforcement of these mitigation measures are fully within the purview of the Planning and Natural Resources Department, delegated by your board. We can bring them back before the Planning Commission and enforce them if they are not following these rules over the entire course of the 30 years. Our experience with these solar developers, and specifically with 8 Minute Energy, is that they are very responsive and that they have complied with all the requirements. However, this is a new requirement, this barrier, and we want to make sure that it is maintained, that it is not falling down, that it is not painted over some strange color. So we have mandated the neutral colors that it's supposed to have, and we also want to make sure that all any tumbleweeds or other brush or debris that blows up against it is also removed immediately. If Mr. Murphy could show where these barrier walls are, this barrier fence. So Mr. Murphy, could you explain okay, so this is the 2 different, for Supervisor Magritt's benefit, there's kind of a darker color and a lighter color. Those are the barrier areas. We identified these barriers based on the science of the windrow, direction of the wind, and the location of the residential areas. And they are at 6 feet as recommended by the AV Dust Busters. The Planning Commission heard this item on August 26, 2021. A number of individuals spoke in opposition, but as you can see, we've received significant letters in opposition as well as letters in support. Up until this moment, we now have in the record, in opposition, 126 comments from 83 commenters and a petition with 948 signatures on it opposed to the project. In support, we have 1,162 comments from 1,160 commenters. The principal objection to this project is that it is too close to the community of Boron and Desert Lake. You can read for yourself, and the community, there's a community representative who does have a PowerPoint that they will be presenting in regards to their concerns that the dust, the potential for valley fever, and the other encroachments are a substantial burden on these communities without any benefit. The question has been raised about in one of the comment letters about the legal issue on the Joshua trees. So the Joshua trees have been analyzed in this environmental impact report. In the course of processing this, it has been created as a candidate species for listing by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Mitigation Measure 4.1-3 requires that all the natural vegetation remain undisturbed whenever possible and that they be vegetated with a native seed mix. There are unavoidable impacts to individual Joshua trees. However, they are required under the state law to get an incidental take permit and to buy replacement mitigation lands. Those replacement mitigation lands will ensure that this project is legally and completely within compliance with those laws. Your board has no Joshua tree preservation ordinance, and we defer to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The incidental take permit, compliance with mitigation measure 4.4-14 and conditions. It is expected the project applicant is going to pay $1.4 million into a Joshua tree mitigation fund. This Joshua tree mitigation fund was established by CDFW for the purpose of addressing threats to the western Joshua tree, including conserving land. This is a distinctly different mitigation and was prearranged with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Fish and Game Commission when they were considering candidates. This and 6 other solar projects were included in that conversation, and mitigation was prepared in advance. So there is no legal obligation for us to go further than this, and no legal right for us to go further than this, since we have no Joshua tree preservation ordinance. The individuals speaking at the Planning Commission in support of the project, which you will hear today, highlighted benefits of the proposal, continued career opportunities, desirable work sites within Kern County to be closer to workers' family, support of local businesses, and tax benefits to the county and to the green energy goals of the state. The findings of fact that you are required to consider under the California Environmental Quality Act require that you take into consideration the unmitigated impacts to aesthetics and wildlife. And you must balance those, since there is no further feasible mitigation that we could possibly impose. You must balance those with the benefits of the project. That includes the social as well as the economic benefits. This project, as committed to 250 megawatt hours of battery storage, along with the O&M building and the solar panels, will provide the following fiscal benefits: one-time sales tax of $2.95 million, and annual property taxes, specifically because of the battery storage, of $2 million a year. We have imposed a local solution for the fact that the property taxes on the land itself under the solar panels and the solar panels themselves are exempt, the solar panels themselves are exempt from reassessment. A cumulative impact charge, the cumulative impact charge for this project is $1.2 to $1.3 million one time. So those are the fiscal benefits. Staff has considered that the commitment to battery storage changes the dynamics of this project in regards to its solar tax exclusion. That, along with the sales tax from the battery storage and the sales tax, the cumulative impact charge, are detailed in the statement of overriding consideration, which is one of the findings that you must make, that the fiscal, social, or other economic benefits outweigh these impacts. I am prepared at the end of all the presentations, if your board requests, to read a slightly revised recommendation into the record, but the recommendation from the Planning Commission is to approve this project with conditions and with the revised conditions. We are prepared to answer questions. Once again, the applicant is here to give a presentation, and then I would ask that you afford I apologize. Mr. Richardson, correct? Richards, I apologize. I knew your first name. That you afford Mr. Richards the opportunity to go next so that he may present his PowerPoint and then, take comments from the public. That completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the applicants, if you guys would like to present your PowerPoint presentation now, that would be the time to do it.
Afternoon, Supervisors. Alex Sundquist for 8 Minute Solar Energy. Really good to see all of you in person. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I promise I'll keep it very brief. I want to respect your time and the time of everyone that showed up today. I do want to start really quick, though, by thanking Ms. Oviatt for that presentation and also all the hard work that her staff has done shepherding this project through the process. It's a rigorous process, it is a fair process, and it is one of the reasons we like doing business here in Kern County. So thank you for that, and Craig and Katrina and Mark, and of course Renell, who's not here today. So I do have a brief presentation. For the benefit of those that may not know who 8 Minute is, I want to give a couple slides worth of information. We were started right here in Southern California by the man you see over there, Tom, who's sitting right over there, second row. And we've got a full decade, over a decade actually, of developing and building some of the best solar farms here in the US. During that time, we've managed to develop and build about 2 gigawatts of solar or solar plus storage in California, Texas, and elsewhere in the Southwest. During that time, we've also managed to amass a pipeline of about 18 gigawatts of solar and about 24 gigawatts of storage. I actually think those numbers may be low at this point, but those are the latest that I have, so those are the ones I can give publicly. And none of this is meant to be a brag, but really to illustrate that when it comes to developing the state-of-the-art, the most innovative and technologically advanced projects in the U.S., we really are the leaders, and so we know what we're doing when it comes to these sorts of projects. Next slide, please. We've been in Kern County for just shy of a decade. And during that time, our projects have already created thousands of jobs, and over their lifetimes will generate tens of millions of dollars in tax revenues for the county. Again, I'll keep this very brief, but I wanted to draw folks' attention to the project on the left there, which is the Springbok cluster. It's actually a cluster of 3 projects located just north of California City. In a very similar environment to the one before you today. So it's a desert environment. It's high wind, high dust, high sand. I mean, it blows constantly. And so point of all that is we know what we're doing when it comes to developing and operating and building projects like this in an environment like this. So we know how to keep dust down. So next slide, please. Ms. Oviatt went through the project specifics really well. I don't think I need to dwell on any of this stuff. I do want to point out a couple things. Number one, we're not using any sort of mirrors. We're not having any of the big towers you may have seen on other projects. This is your sort of plain vanilla, panels that you would see on folks' houses, on their rooftops, covered parking, for instance. There's nothing weird or strange about this technology. And in fact, if you look closely, you'll notice that it's kind of a dark blue color. And the reason for that is because there's an anti-reflective coating on these panels. Ultimately, we're in the business of capturing sunlight, right? We want to capture as much sunlight as possible. And so the last thing we need is for rays to bounce off and scatter. We want to capture as much of that as possible. That's also, by the way, yes, there are a lot of strict regulations about dust and dust control, but we're highly motivated to keep dust down regardless of all that. I mean, the last thing we want is crud on our panels. We don't want dust, we don't want sand, so we're highly motivated to keep dust down on our projects once they're operational. One final thing I'll point out is that if the project is approved, the current plan would be to start construction sort of summer-ish time of next year. As Ms. Oviatt pointed out, construction period would be somewhere on the order of 12 to 18 months. Important there to note is that it's not like we're building on all parts of the project all at once. It's sort of a rolling construction in effect. So you kind of start on one end and then, you know, kind of move west, for instance, as you complete the project. So on any given place or near any given community, you're not going to have construction during that entire period. So I think that's an important thing to note. Next slide, please. So as Ms. Oviatt outlined, we have been engaged with the community for quite a while. It's been over 2 years now, and yes, the pandemic has made it challenging to reach out like we normally would with you know, kind of in-person group meetings and things like that. So we've had to try to adapt. We have a project website with a very extensive FAQ. We've had informational mailers go out. We've had video simulations, photo simulations, everything we can basically do short of showing up in person. Now, having said that, we also have, once things opened up a bit, we've got site tours running. In fact, they're still running if people are interested. And very recently, we also had an open house where people could come and talk to us on sort of a you know, a subject-by-subject basis where we had technical experts answering questions, et cetera. But, you know, as Ms. Oviatt noted, one of the comments we got very early on, and overwhelmingly so, was that, look, guys, the first iteration of the project was just too close. And you know what? Fair enough, it was. And so we went back to the drawing board over the course of a few months and really looked at how far can we set back from residences. And what we ended up with is fairly substantial setbacks, which, you know, that meant we lost about 350 acres of a project. And that translates to about 60, 70 megawatts, depending on exact location. But that means that we could provide setbacks of up to about half a mile. It's about 9 football fields if you have a hard time kind of visualizing what half a mile really looks like. And in fact, that photo right there that you see on the right is a photo simulation of what that might look. So this is a view from Boron looking south. And if you kind of squint right, you'll see a kind of a dark blue line. If you remember from the previous slide, it's the dark blue of panels. So this is sort of a simulation of what the project would look like. And it's, you know, as you can see, it's quite far back and difficult to see. But even that's kind of difficult to capture in a static image. So what we did is actually went out and took some video photos with I think it was like an iPhone 8 or 9 or something. And put together a sort of a video that illustrates what this really looks like on the ground. So I believe that's the next slide, please. And Scott is actually in the audience. He's about 6 foot tall. So here we're looking southeast from the park in Boron, past the raised landfill. And if what you're looking for is an orange dot, and even you can tell when you're zoomed in. I mean, I had to look at this several times just to spot it. He's definitely there. I promise you that. And here again, looking southwest from Boron, past the trains that are stopped there. And again, you're looking for a bright orange dot, and zoomed in, it's really difficult to tell where Scott is. Here, looking west from Desert Lake, again, this is about half a mile, looking past the freeway on-ramp there. And again, you're looking for a small orange dot. And this is a bright orange hunting vest that he has. And again, it's very difficult to see. This view here south, this is the shortest distance. You might actually be able to see, so we're looking past sort of commercial buildings on the south end of Desert Lake. You might be able to see the orange here. But again, you really do have to zoom in to have a shot at that. And yep, there he is, there's Scott.
That's the 500 feet.
So
That's 500 feet.
This video here is looking north. This isn't the entirety of the southern boundary of Desert Lake, but it gives you a sense of there are certain areas that are already blocked by commercial buildings. So you have a hard time looking past these buildings at our project. And then as I mentioned before, there is a raised railroad here with trains that do go by quite often here. So there are some mitigating factors here already. I do want to point out a couple of things. Number one, of course, solar panels are not bright orange. They are that dark blue, so they will already be more difficult to see. Number two, another thing that people don't know a lot is that entire full section south of Desert Lake, so 640 acres, is actually already zoned industrial. So that means anything like a warehouse or something that is more visually impactful could already go there. So we figured, a solar farm probably is less impactful than something like that. And then finally, what you're seeing here is the CUP boundary. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we would have a fence or even panels right up to that boundary. In fact, one of the things we heard during the open house was that folks wanted to see, okay, within that CUP boundary, how far can we set back panels even within that? And so we've actually been at work for the last few weeks here, specifically focused on Desert Lake to see how far back we can do that. It is a very tight site already, but we think we may be able to squeeze out another couple hundred feet or so kind of south of Desert Lake. It's still in the works, but certainly that's true there and elsewhere at the site. We're trying to see how much we can squeeze back the site even within those boundaries. So that I can commit to today for sure. Next slide, please. Ms. Oviatt did go through some of these numbers, but sort of when you come to think of benefits for a project like this, we think of them in sort of three buckets: jobs, revenues, and then environmental benefits as well. As was already mentioned, this could create at peak about 1,000 construction jobs. Yes, they are temporary jobs, but that's sort of the nature of the beast, right? That is, you make a career in construction from stringing together temporary jobs. That is the nature of construction. And so we also have been in cooperating with the unions, making sure that we have apprenticeship opportunities, et cetera, for folks that want a job. You got to be willing to work really hard. You got to be drug-free, et cetera. But if you want a job, there are opportunities here. I'll note, by the way, also that for the projects that we have built in Kern County, generally speaking, it's about 80 to 90% local hires. So 80 to 90% coming from Kern County itself, and the rest will typically come from areas just outside Kern. On the revenue side, Lorelei mentioned this already. But there are potentially some good property taxes and sales taxes coming in from this project. Again, these are estimates. We won't know exactly what the numbers are until we know exactly what the project looks like and the property is assessed. But I do want to put that into perspective, which is the latest tax roll I saw for the property as it currently stands was just under $18,000 per year total. So over the course of 35 years, you're looking at about just over $600,000 compared to these numbers that you're seeing here today. As also was mentioned, we do have this new cumulative impact charge. If the project is fully built out, this is calculated on a gross acre base, or net acre basis, I should say. So I hate to say it, but we are very motivated again to squeeze the project as much as we can to make sure this charge is as small a number as possible. On the environmental side, a project like this would offset about 860,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. I have no idea what that looks like, and so I asked folks smarter than I am, what does that really mean? And that's the equivalent of planting about 14 million trees. And again, in the sense of perspective, that would take about 10 times the amount of land that we have here to plant that many trees. And speaking of Joshua trees, yes, no one I guarantee this, no one at 8 Minute is happy that we're impacting Joshua trees. However, we would be putting $1.4 million into a fund specifically designed to enhance Joshua trees and their habitat. So that is something that we would for sure be doing as well. That does conclude my presentation. I am here to answer any questions you may have. I have my team here as well that is far smarter than I am and probably better looking as well. But we are here to help with anything that you need. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Perez.
Yeah.
Thank you for your excellent presentation. It was thorough and user-friendly. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that. Just two quick questions, and I know you have a good reason, but as we're thinking about these projects moving out, the Joshua Tree component obviously hurts. So can you just give me I don't need a huge explanation, but why didn't you choose an area with less impact on the Joshua trees? Is this the area with the least impact? I don't know, but But I just want that, just quick, I'm curious about that and how we should think about that moving forward since we do half the state's renewables or more. And then also, what is the fund going to do for the trees? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so those are good questions. Maybe I'll start sort of at a higher level for Joshua Tree. What drives, kind of the location of where we end up is really substations. So it's not like we get to pick exactly where we want to be. It's where are there substations with capacity, transmission, all that kind of stuff. And then once you've located those, you basically set a radius of, okay, the project can be this far from that substation. And the larger the project, the longer a Gentai, transmission line that you can afford. So a project of this size, which, from our perspective, is a smaller project actually these days, it can only afford a certain length, right? And so that means you have to be within a certain radius of a substation. And so within that radius, then you go through all the different mechanics of, let's look at where are the residents, let's look at things like bio issues, including Joshua Tree, et cetera, and try to find the places that are as least impactful as possible. In this case,
that's part of your siting process as well?
Exactly, yeah. We have layers and layers and layers on all of this. And so one of the challenges here is that we're sort of locked in, if you will. What wasn't shown on these maps is that just south of the project, and in fact just west of it as well, is Edwards Air Force Base. So we obviously can't move south or west there. And what's also not shown is to the north, Rio Tinto and the Borax mine actually owns all that land to the north and to the northwest. So the only way we could really move is further east, and that's when you end up in San Bernardino County. No offense to San Bernardino County,
We're better.
We like doing business here, we like doing business in both places, but certainly that's the only other place we could move. So yes,
Okay.
we do try to look for the least impactful place, and that does include Joshua Tree as well.
And what does the fund do?
That is a good question. It is not up to us how those funds get used. It's actually up to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. But it would go toward sort of enhancing habitat, for instance, purchasing conservation easements, things like that. I will say that is meant to benefit more trees than we would impact.
I saw that in your report.
Yeah.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. Any other questions? Okay, it doesn't look like there's any right now, so thanks for the presentation. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name's Roy Richards, R-I-C-H-A-R-D-S. I'm a resident of Boron. I'm here basically in opposition to this project, but thank you, Mr. Murphy, for helping me get this set up to present. So next slide, please. So I'm only covering a couple of the topics. We kind of picked the ones that really we felt would be better represented by visual aids. So next slide. Air quality, next slide. So I know it was already brought up that about the Antelope Valley Dustbusters. This is basically a well-respected group who organized over 30 years ago to combat nuisance dust problems, mostly from old farmlands. This slide references one of their guides, which was also used in development of at least one mitigation measure for Aratina. The guide has an illustration showing how moving sand causes dust, but it also, more importantly, points out that native desert does not produce blowing dust. So if you have native desert, you don't have a dust problem. Next slide, please. This is important because upwind of both Desert Lake and Boron is native desert. So this explains why our community does not have a blowing sand and dust problem. I know it was brought up before about the Springbok project in the Rancho Seco community. The issue is that was actually old farmland that had a history of blowing sand and dust issues, nasty sand and dust issues. I worked in that area. I'm familiar with it. Next slide, please. Again, referencing back to our dustbusters, this stability is basically because native desert has a crust over the soil and vegetation. Now, human activities will break that crust and the vegetation gets taken away. This will lead to blowing sand and dust issues. And the only real restoration method, according to, again, dustbusters that they've published in their guides and also in multiple journals, is by reestablishing the native desert. The problem is that's incredibly difficult, if not impossible. The opportunities to show demonstrations of that happening are almost, they just don't happen. So really based on this fact, if you're developing an area of native desert, you better be 100% sure because it's really like Pandora's box. Once you get this broken open and started, you're not going to get it back. Next slide, please. So this is really important for us because looking at the prevailing winds for our area, we have a westerly wind. Next slide. This means that the community of Desert Lake has any dust that's generated on sections 3, 4, and 5 will be blown into their community. This community has an elementary school that's only 800 feet from the project. It also has a 60-unit apartment complex that's only 600 feet from the project. There's also a number of residential homes in this area. Next slide, please. For Boron, the same issue exists, just from different sections of the project. And here we have a Little League field that's about a third of the mile from the project. The junior senior high school is approximately 1 mile from the project. And probably most telling at all of the residents in Boron are within 2 miles of the edge of the project. So please remember that distance. Next slide. So these two photos were taken in Mojave on a weekend day that was pretty windy. This is basically showing wind blowing sand and dust off the Sanborn Solar Project in Mojave. This has mitigation measures in place, and yet we had dust crossing the 58 freeway 5 miles from the project. Remember, all of residents in Boron are within 2 miles of our project, and as close as 600 feet. This outcome should not be surprised, since again, the air quality mitigation measures basically still, after all the work that Planning Office and Aratina have done, still only rate an unavoidable rating. Next slide, please. And next slide, sorry. Got a little out of sync there. One more slide, thank you. All right, so Aratina does have one additional mitigation measure, the solid barrier. So we have questions on this that we've listed, but even with this solid barrier, which, by the way, it appears it can be built towards the end of construction when that would probably benefit us the least. Even with this in place, we still feel that this project violates Rule 419 of the East Kern Air Pollution Control District's rulebook on nuisance air quality issues. Next slide. So for road and pedestrian safety, just a quick couple items. So sites 1, 2, and 3 can only be accessed using 2 railroad crossings. Both crossings are adjacent to the main intersection for their corresponding communities. The issue is these crossings are only 225 feet from the main road in town, 20 Mule Team Road. So if we get a train blocking the tracks, it's not going to take very much traffic to block that roadway and block those intersections. The Desert Lake intersection is the main intersection leading to the elementary school. And the Boron crossing is the one that we've recently had a very nice pedestrian crossing put in for. Thank you, Mr. Scrivener. And this is, how the kids from the south side of town get over to the high school. They have to use that crossing. Then they have to cross that intersection not once, not twice, but 3 times. Next slide, please. Looking at the southern residential area of Boron, the construction traffic crosses this area to gain access to Site 2's main gate. So the location of the bus stations in this area are kind of on the outer edges. So all the children are walking through the streets, getting to those sections. And they are using literally the streets because we do have limited sidewalks in this area. And also there's a high traffic due to the park being in this area and the Little League fields. Next slide, please. I'm just going to lightly touch on a public health issue here. So we know valley fever exists in our area. This information was taken from a Kern County Valley Fever website. And in here it basically says that one of the factors that can increase your risks of getting valley fever is to be caught in a dust storm. Now, can you imagine what happens if your house where you live is in the dust storm for hours, if not days? In the EIR, there's also 8 mitigation measures for valley fever, but only one of those mitigation measures can be applied to the general public. So this change in air quality will increase health risks for our residents. Next slide, please. So how do we avoid this? Well, if we build solar instead of native desert onto previously disturbed lands. So while native desert going to solar is a downgrade in air quality and in many other issues, placing solar on disturbed land will have the added benefit of stabilizing that. It's what you can see in Rancho Seco in the Cantil area. Now, due to recent water adjudications, there's more non-viable farmland than ever. So that is going to be a source of dust. So again, why take out something that's going to make a downgrade for the land and the residents and the community? Instead, choose a site that's going to be an upgrade. And if you were in East Kern yesterday, we can use some soil stabilization. It looked like a dust storm from the 30s. So next slide, please. So while going through this process, there's a couple extra questions we're just going to lightly touch on. The question of, does large solar fields change ambient temperatures? I know that we've seen one study that says yes, we haven't seen any studies that say no. It doesn't really seem conclusive. So we would like to see more studies done on this before you put this upwind of us. Also for the carbon calculations, was this truly a cradle to grave carbon calculation? Does it take into account all these various items we've listed? Probably most importantly, the desert vegetation is there, it's absorbing carbon, it's plant vegetation. We're gonna lose this for 50 plus years. I know the project is only for 30 years, but you'll be lucky if you get any sort of vegetation growth after 20 years. And finally, what will the future bring for boron? We don't know, but if Aratina goes in, our choices are greatly limited. So future development kind of goes out the window. We're the first and last thing that people going on the 58 entering Kern County and leaving Kern County see. So what do you want? Do you want something on the left where you still have some nice Joshua trees, some beautiful desert vegetation, or do you want a solar farm? Next slide. Just briefly, these are the high points. So in conclusion, you have over 2,000 Kern County residents that are going to be exposed to blowing dust affecting their health. Their safety for pedestrians will be diminished. Public health will suffer in multiple areas. Increasing the risk of valley fever. There's also people with pre-existing conditions like asthma, allergies, even possibly epilepsy could have issues with a decrease in the air quality. Poor air quality decreases the opportunities for outdoor exercise. We know that that is important for public health. We recently had a new walking path put in the last few years, and that gets utilized by quite a bit. It is also downwind of this project. And the children of boron, there's not a lot to do out there. I grew up out there. The way you stay healthy and really vitalized is sports. And if we lose the ability to do our sports, I don't know what's going to happen. Finally, Kern County has an opportunity to not only lead in renewable energies, but lead in responsible renewable energies. Just a couple suggestions: establish some sort of regulation with proximity to solar farms to residential areas, and also work with the Air Pollution Control District to identify lands that already have a dust issue that would actually benefit from some type of project like this. Public safety will be realized by moving Aratina to disturbed land in Kern County, a dual benefit both for the solar and also for the rehabbing of the land. And that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's questions or not.
Are there any questions from the board at this point? Okay. No,
Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Okay, could we have our next public speaker, please?
Hello, my name is Melanie Richardson, and I had sent stuff in to each of you by email last night, and somehow it did not end up in the opposition new stuff, even though I sent it before some of the other stuff, so I'm not sure how that happened.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Melanie, I believe this is your PowerPoint that you had submitted?
Yes.
Yes, we have provided that to the board and copied it.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay, so Melanie Richardson, MELANIE-RICHARDSON, and I am a registered nurse with my master's in nursing education, and my application is in for my public health certification because I have all of those qualifications. So I was asked to come today because I have 4 sons who play sports and go to school in the community of Boron. My husband is a school teacher there. I graduated from there. I live in North Edwards, but I'm already affected by valley fever. My son, who goes to school at the preschool, which is actually the closest school, which is only 700 feet away, cannot play outside yesterday because of the poor air quality. So I have called my project, or my PowerPoint presentation, the proposed solar project is the death sentence for boron. My second slide actually was covered up by a nuisance. District 1 and 2, you guys may be...
Ma'am?
Yes?
We had the PowerPoint from the applicant and the PowerPoint from the opposing party. So at this point, all the comment for or against it is 2 minutes.
It's okay. All right. So 419, it talks about the air quality, and that is violated. So the projection location map actually correlates exactly, the particle matter in the area yesterday correlates exactly with the California maps of the solar fields that are on the SEIA.org website. And the wind actually goes down the same path that Valley Fever is traveling from 2013 to 2019, the same years that the solar farms are coming up in our communities. Cases of Valley Fever are going up in Kern County when the solar farms are being built. The lifetime cost of Valley Fever from the Kern Valley Institute here in Bakersfield. The disseminated disease is 1.5 million. Chronic Valley Fever, 4,800. Uncomplicated, that's easy, 2,200. So $135,000 donation that Boron got is an absolute joke. 1.3 million that they've donated so far, absolute joke, because all of our citizens are going to be affected by this. So we are supposed to have a health care in all policies. This is from the California Department of Justice. Attorney General Rob Bonta. Healthcare in all policies, Executive Order S0410.
We're about 20 seconds over, so if you could bring your comments to a close, please.
Yes. We're a vulnerable population. Our health is important, and it is your job to now put health in all policies. The CEQA has stopped, has revised all of their policies as of October 6th to review everything and put public health in all policies. And it is your job to protect our vulnerable population. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please? And just a reminder, it's 2 minutes per speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is June Lee, J-U-N, last name Lee, L-E-E. I'm legal counsel and director of land acquisition for the Desert Tortoise Preserve Committee based in Ridgecrest, and also board member of the Coalition for a Balanced Environment and Solar Environmental Conservancy. So I'm here today representing all three organizations. All three organizations interface with 8 Minute Energy, the proponent for the past several years now, in conjunction with their Springbok projects, Springbok 1, 2, and 3. And frankly, we were quite concerned when they first proposed development near the Desert Tortoise Research Natural Area in the western part of the county, because their solar arrays essentially abutted the federal preserve. But after a consultative process, we found the organization to be quite responsive, very transparent in their planning, and very open to suggestions on how to improve their projects. So as a result, I'm here to support, on behalf of my organizations, the Aratina project, based on our extremely positive relationships and working relationships with 8 Minute Energy. Now, in respect to the project itself, I spent about half a day yesterday driving through the project area. And I'm very familiar with the desert, having been involved in conservation for 35 years now. And I believe that the mitigation measures that they're proposing for Joshua tree, Mojave ground squirrel, desert tortoise, and other sensitive species that are impacted by the project will greatly enhance the conservation prospects for all of those species. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Donna Fort, F-O-R-T, and I'd like to know how will you prevent valley fever and other health problems caused by unhealthy air quality in our vulnerable population? I'd like to know, with our lack of health care access and distance from intensive care, how will we obtain rapid access for these exacerbations when air quality is frequently poor? What about the pediatric population, which there's a lot of kids out there? I'm sure you guys all have children, and you would be worried if it were your children. We're 2.5 hours from a children's hospital to take care of our children. Why hasn't a health impact been done? These questions should have been answered a long time ago. We all know there's dust, there's fugitive dust out there, and disturbing the desert's going to make it worse. Why hasn't there been a health assessment done? You know, we're out there forgotten about on just about everything. Come on. Consider our health. We deserve that. We pay taxes, just like you guys do. We just don't get services from our taxes. We have no full-time sheriff. Our roads are crap. Nobody comes and fixes anything. That's the county's responsibility. For God's sake, look after our health and our children's health and our parents. How does unhealthy air quality align with health in all policies, task force, and Justice 40 initiative? Why is there a state policy to protect workers from valley fever and not the communities? You know, they're protected, but we're not. They're gonna leave, they're temporary. They don't hire people from town, they're temporary. You know, they're protected, but the people who have to live with it for the next 40 or 50 years, we're not protected? Who's gonna pay our doctor bills? You know, we shouldn't have to pay because of this. That's not fair. You know, it's not fair at all. You know, our full-time sheriff has been pulled. Where's the tax dollars going? Or how much of it are we gonna get?
Okay, ma'am, you're about 30 seconds over, so if you could bring your comments to a close, please. Could we have our next speaker?
Hi, my name is Lynn Black, B-L-A-C-K. I have first a couple questions. So if the vote is no, will 8-Minute Solar have a right to appeal? How much is 8-Minute Solar paying Kern County for this one-time payout? And if the county allows large solar to invade Boron Desert Lake, what about the other small communities in our Kern County? Are you considering any of them? Even though the county board supervisors were well informed, many people in our community were not. They didn't receive notices if they weren't within 1,000 feet of that project. This is affecting all of our communities, not just those 1,000 people or people within those 1,000 feet. And therefore, we've tried, even with COVID, they're a multi-million-dollar company. I've reached out to them. I've tried getting them to do online Zoom meetings with the community where we could have people socially distanced with COVID distancing. People that have access to the internet could actually view this and have question and answers. What they provided in our community this last month or two was a bunch of flyers, and the speaker that they had, we thought we were going to go to a meeting where we could ask questions and hear the questions and get replies back. It was just a show and tell. They did have people, but they couldn't provide any answers that we had, questions that we had. And that was very discerning. Now, back to my topic on the solar island effect. Green Biz did an article 25 March 2021 covering 20% of the Sierra Desert. The solar farms raised the local temperatures by 1.5 degrees Celsius. according to that model. Boron is a total area of 8,844 acres. 20% of that equals to 1,768 acres. 8-minute solar project is going to cover 2,554 acres. That comes to 29% of our desert. That's going to be covered by the solar. This will increase our temperatures based on those models. Converting the Celsius degrees to Fahrenheit, that's 34.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Our average temperatures in the summer are over 100 degrees. This will raise our temperatures to 134 degrees. Now add in, and this is every day.
Ma'am, we're about
365
30
days a
seconds
year.
over again, so.
Okay. Our winds are west-southwest. The projects on the south and on the west side of Boron and Desert Lake, they encompass us. There is no way that we're going to be able to escape that heat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'd like to thank you in advance for allowing me to speak today. My name is Nick Hill. I'm the president of the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce. I am here today in support of the Aratina Solar Center. If approved, the Aratina Solar Center will bring gainful employment and continued investment to East Kern County while generating enough clean energy to power 180 California homes day and night. With the 570 well-paying construction jobs, it would provide workers around $60 million in wages and over $30 million of generated tax revenues for Kern County and supportive services like public safety, education, and that's just to name a few. The Aratina Solar Center is a benefit to Kern County. The jobs this project creates will allow the underemployed citizens in the disadvantaged and underserved areas to build strong careers. Additionally, there will be significant spillover economic benefits for small businesses from restaurants, gas stations, hotels, stores, and that potential could go on and on. I can state with confidence that this project will benefit businesses here in Kern County and including those that are in large part of our membership as well. So approving the Aratina Solar Center will send a strong signal that Kern County is open for business and supportive for transformative projects that will benefit our county's workforce, economy, and diversity of our energy industry. Kern County is currently a leader in energy that thanks in part of projects like Aratina Solar Center. Approving this project would strengthen our business climate and ensure that we remain a leader in energy production for years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Justin Knight, KNI-GHT, President of the Boron Chamber of Commerce, here on behalf of the community. We are not happy with where the fields are being put. We're not completely against the project, just we're asking for them to be moved away from our community. We've got a small community. I moved to Boron about 4 years ago because I saw its potential for growth. And with borax being on industrial on one side and solar being industrial on the other side, it pretty much landlocks our community from ever growing again. I have a view out of my back door of the mine, and out of the front door, I would overlook Site 3. My kids play in this desert. All of our kids play in this desert. We have off-road vehicles, and that's going to take away from part of our kids' enjoyment as well. Again, consider the health of our community, consider the growth of our town. Supervisor Scribner, you've done a lot for us, and we very much appreciate it. And I'd hate to see for the growth of our community, the way it's been going the last couple of years, the new bike path, the new fixing downtown, making it look better, and now we're going to be completely locked in by these solar panels. I thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name's Tom Owens, O-W-E-N-S. I'm a member of I have been a member of both the communities of California City and Boron. With regards to where the solar plant was constructed in California City, that's north of the city, on previously disturbed soils, with the wind direction that blows predominantly out of the west in a northeasterly direction. That carries any fugitive dust completely out into the desert. Nobody is affected by that at all. The community of California City is not affected by that in any way. In the city of Boron, the wind blows in the same direction, as you've seen from all the maps. All of these solar fields will be on the south side of the community. I can assure you, I took some pictures around town yesterday of the dust that was blowing. We literally had waves of dirt and dust going down the streets. The road, 20 Mill, or Boron Avenue, or 20 Mill Team Road between Boron and Desert Lake. There was a person on the bike path that I got a picture of who you can barely see the guy because he's getting bombarded with a floating cloud of dust also. With regard to the comments that the gentleman made, let's remember that probably if we factored it out, they admitted there's about 25 permanent jobs. Those will be electrician jobs, great jobs to have. We welcome jobs like that to our community, but most of the jobs that will be part of this project are going to be temporary jobs that will last maybe 1 year if we're lucky and they go slow in their construction to try to hold down the dust. Maybe, let's say, they span it out over 3 years, and then those jobs are gone, never to return. That field will be completed, and the only people that will be working there will be 25 electricians. But our community will be affected forever. Our home the values of our homes will be affected forever. When you have, in our area, we probably have at least half of the year where we have winds that are at least between 10 and 15 miles per hour. You strip that land of the native vegetation, and we will be living in a dust cloud with dangerous particles, valley fever, for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And just one final time, 2 minutes is the allotted time for speakers. So please try and be mindful.
Brock Job, J-O-B, longtime resident, 45 years of the town of Boron. Let there be no mistake. This is not about jobs. We're not trying to take anyone's jobs away. This is not about jobs. Make no mistake about it. You got union members in here. We're not trying to take people's jobs away. We are more concerned about the health of our community. The simple facts are these. Aratina did not do their due diligence in coming to our community to open up lines of communication. They finally, for the first time, came to our community last week. We got people out. Finally got some people out because they're finally notified, because we got a grassroots effort together to notify people in the community that had no idea what was going on, that what was about to happen to their desert, to the community, the threat that was coming. Guess what? We showed up. We showed up. We asked questions. You know what we got? Well, we're trying to move it back. This is all about money, folks. This is all about money. But money doesn't do anything for us. This brings zero for us, zero for Boron, okay, zero. You know where the power goes? Not here, not in Kern County. This goes to Monterey. They were hired by a company in Monterey to put this thing up. So the power goes to Monterey. Doesn't go to us. We get nothing except for valley fever, except for our desert taken away, except for our dirt roads. I live less than 800 feet. My home, less than 800 feet. I have 6 rental properties, less than 1,000 feet from this. I have a commercial building with 2 commercial sites close to this. You think this don't affect us? You think this don't affect my business? You don't think it affects her business of 60 units right up against it? It absolutely does. I urge you to please take into consideration that it doesn't do anything for us except for negative. It has a negative impact on us. And I would urge you not to cave in to this, to the one-time money that you're gonna receive for this, because it affects us very gravely out on the eastern seaboard. Thank you.
Can we have our next speaker, please?
How you doing? My name is Bernard Taylor, Taylor. I'm a member of the Local 433 Ironworkers Union. I've been a union for going on 4 years now. And I'm 32 years old. Thanks to the union, I've been able to buy a home. I've been able to provide for my family, my 4 children, my wife. And I've been able to keep a stable career. I don't like to call it a job because it's not like we work one place and then we just never work again. And the nature of our union is to keep members employed, to keep us working, to keep us stable civilians and citizens of this country. And pretty much that's just the bottom line basis of this union, just to keep people working. I heard somebody say it's not all about money. I'm gonna give you a brief little story. Prior to me joining the union, I had no idea what I was gonna be doing. None. I was an ex-felon. I was going crazy. I'm in and out of mental homes, all kind of stuff. I was trying to sell Herbalife. Now with Herbalife, I had no idea, what I was doing, right? So I'm just selling people stuff, and I'm like, man, I don't even take it. Why am I selling them this Herbalife? So I had a baseline of integrity there. And I stopped selling it. So the money stopped. And I couldn't provide anything. So this is just an example of, if everybody did that in the world, no one would work anywhere. You would just have a bunch of people I'm not gonna sell McDonald's. I'm not gonna sell Burger King. I'm not gonna work at Target. It's too expensive for this. You just have a whole bunch of malarkey. But with this union, like I said, it's provided me an opportunity to provide. Bottom line, that's what this country is established on. Who can make some money, who can provide, and what can we do to make ourselves better citizens and better people? So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Debbie Irving, I-R-V-I-N-G. I've lived in Boron off and on for the last 63 years. I'm here to tell you that sites 2, 3, and 4 should be gone, scrapped. 8 Minute Solar wanted us to believe that they were 1,500 feet from the nearest residence. They're actually 520 feet from my front door, because they started their measurement inside the community, not on 20 Mule Team. They started it at Chaparral and El Mirage. We learned that at their little meet and greet. Okay, once operational, the sand should stop. I work for Roseman High School. I'm also a union member. I also go to work every day so I can buy a house, so I could buy Starbucks. And I asked my kids today, because yesterday the wind was so bad, and the dust did not start from the 14. It started on the other side of Roseman High School on the east side from the solar field that's going up right there. The dust was so bad they had to stop transportation. These kids in Roseman and all of our kids have been home for 17 months, not able to go to school. And now they get to go to school and they don't know how they're gonna get home, because the roads to Bacchus and to Lancaster were closed. And they were sitting in their class going, oh great, how am I gonna get home? I had one girl who was nearly in tears yesterday. I had another boy who, you look at him, he's a football player, he's a big guy. And I said, when I asked him, so How did the dust affect you? Because my throat's a little scratchy today. I'm having to lecture through a mask and all that. And I was expecting teenage stuff. My hair got messed up. I couldn't see, my eyes hurt. It was hard to walk home. And this big old football player, he's a junior in high school, said, I was traumatized. I did not know how I was going to get home yesterday because the road was closed due to the sand and dust. So I leave Roseman with all that dust in my car because I was stupid and cracked my windows because it was nice and warm at 7 o'clock in the morning, and my car is filled with dust like this. And as I drive home, the dust is getting worse and worse because I'm leaving Roseman from those solar fields, driving right down the 14 to the 58, and there's the Mojave ones. And that dust is now collecting with the Roseman dust. And it made it all the way to Boron, 45 to 50 miles away.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're coming up on 3 minutes already.
Okay. This dust is going to affect our children, it's going to affect our grandparents and our parents. Somebody else can talk about the Joshua trees. Somebody else can talk about all the animals that are going to be displaced and move into our little town. So thank you.
Could we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon, County Board of Supervisors. My name is Hertz Ramirez, and I'm the business manager of the Laborers International Union of North America, Local 220. I am here on behalf of 2,000 members in support of the Aratina Solar Project. I strongly urge that the county move forward and improve this project for all the benefits as far as jobs, economic benefits here, and the jobs it's going to create for a lot of these hardworking union members. Thank you.
Thank you. Our chair stepped away momentarily. Appreciate you coming. Thank you. Come on down. Now's the time to be heard.
I've been in Boron for 45 years.
Good afternoon.
My name is Stephen Booth. I would like to know.
Bowie, sir?
Pardon?
How should you spell your last name?
Booth, B-O-O-T-H.
I misunderstood you. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to know, out of the hundreds of thousands of acres, for God's sake, why do they want to build this right in the middle of our town? It does makes no sense. That's all I need. I don't need 2 minutes to let you know that.
Sir, you may recall earlier the conversation about transmission lines. You know, in the process of creating energy.
There's 3 transmission lines. They go into the borax plant. So it's all about power. It's about money and power. We all understand that. But they're going to destroy our little town. I've been there for, like I said, almost 50 years. And it's really depressing to see what they're going to do. They're going to destroy the deserts, all the fauna, all the small little animals, from the horny toad to the lizards, all gone. That's what'll happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Any other speakers who would like to come down and be heard on this project, please do so now. Feel free to come down and wait if you have a limited schedule, but certainly that moves things quicker. Ma'am, good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Connie, C-O-N-N-I-E, Kostopoulos, K-O-S-T-O-P-O-U-L-O-S. And I have lived in Boron for 55 of my 66 years today. Oh, and I'm so passionate about this.
Happy birthday.
I've come on my birthday. Thank you. I don't know how this turned into us against the unions. I was a union president for 27 years for California School Employees Association with the New York chapter for classified, a state regional rep for 13 years. I'm all about the unions. These jobs, my son worked for a solar company, plant company, a very large one. They are transient. I call them transient because they're not permanent. The jobs do go first to the union guys, as they should. But this is about our community, and I'm going to appeal to you on a personal level. I'm a grandmother of 4 beautiful grandchildren. My son is the principal at West Bourne. My husband retired from York as an administrator. He was a principal, a coach, CIF winning coach. We're so vested in Boron. Doesn't look pretty, but it's got a lot of good people. And we're not dumb. We're pretty darn smart. This is going to destroy our community. Our housing prices have just gone up They're going to hit rock bottom. Even if you want to move when you retire, who's going to buy a house in the middle of a solar energy plant, a solar farm plant? All for the energy. It's not going to be good for us. There's lots of land you can put this. Why put it? I mean, it insults my intelligence. In the middle of a community and surround us. Our kids play Little League out there. Their lungs are getting filled with dust and dirt. I have a brother-in-law who does have valley fever. It has destroyed his health. It's a very real thing, and it's very scary, and we are too close. I urge you. I'm a grandma. I got 3 beautiful babies. One's in preschool. My daughter-in-law teaches preschool. They're at West Boron. They're already wearing masks. Now they're going to have gas masks, literally, because that dirt is horrendous. Yesterday was a premonition of what is coming. My husband was driving in it. He said, "This is gross." I said, "Get used to it." Because and it sounds like, I hate to say this, I don't mean to be negative, that's a done deal, but I hope you're listening to us, please. I said, get used to it and magnify that by 100%. Thank you so much for your time.
We always listen, I promise you. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Richard Chapman, C-H-A-P-M-A-N. I'm the President and CEO of the Kern Economic Development Corporation, and I'm here to speak in support of the Aratina 2.0 solar PV and battery storage project. Kern EDC's mission is to promote and cultivate boundless opportunities for business in Kern County, and we work to create a strong and diversified economy. And frankly, Kern County is the energy capital of the U.S. We're proud to be in the heart of the energy capital, and your commitment to developing a diversified energy economy. Our litmus test to support a project has 3 components, and it's been discussed pretty much at length today. But number 1 is jobs, labor, income, and we know that there's 1,000 construction jobs, as well as 25 permanent jobs, which comes out to be about $100 million in wage income. And that's not to mention indirect and induced jobs. Restaurants, service providers in the region will benefit. That's the indirect and induced multiplier effect. And these jobs are critical right now. We're still hovering over at double-digit unemployment in Kern County. Capital investment for the project is estimated at $650 million. And then finally, public revenue. All told, about $75 million. And that's why that energy storage project component is so important. And 8-Minute Energy has been investing in Kern County for over a decade. As was mentioned, they have 3 projects, the Springbok, the Redwood, as well as the Eland storage. So they already have one of the largest battery storage facilities in North America. On behalf of Kern EDC, we humbly ask and request that you support this critical economic development project. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Thank you, Chairman Peters, members of the board. My name is Nick Ortiz, representing the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. The Chamber is a business association representing over 1,000 members who collectively employ over 70,000 Californians. While we are the Greater Bakersfield Chamber, we have membership that spans the entire county. We're here in support of 8-Minute Energy's Aratina 2.0 project. This project further solidifies Kern County as the place for energy innovation and development. I think Mr. Chapman went over all the stats about the benefits in terms of jobs and capital investment and public revenue. I think I'd like to just commend the county and especially the planning department and Director Oviat's efforts to balance economic development, environmental protection, and community engagement. 8-Minute Energy is very involved in the community, and we believe that they're going to be an excellent steward of the project. And for those and other reasons, we ask for the board's approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Norman Tietze, and I live in South Boron, and I'm against it because it's a death sentence for me. The reason is there's only one egress out of the south side of Boron, and that egress, when the train stops on the tracks for 4 to 5 hours, you can't get in or out. And when you need an ambulance or a fire department, there's 2 dirt roads. that allow emergency egress or access, but those are going to be fenced off. I want to know what's going to happen when those are fenced off and a train is sitting on that track for hours. How am I going to get an ambulance in there if I'm sick or have a heart attack or something? That's all.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Tina Hanson, first name T-E-N-A, Hanson, H-A-N-S-O-N. I've lived on the corner of John and South Wesley for over 30 years. My home is directly across South Wesley from where the proposed project is going to be, Site 2. One of my concerns is also what the gentleman was just talking about. We use the desert access where Site 2 is for exit. When there's a railroad train on the tracks, just in the last 2 months, I've had to use the dirt roads twice just to get to work. I've stayed at the train for more than 30 minutes in the morning trying to get out to go to work. There's something across the tracks, you take the dirt road. Get you to Desert Lake, you can exit and be able to get to work. If we had a fire come across our community on the south side, we would have no access to get away if there's a train across the tracks, because there's going to be no exits. The blowing sand and dust yesterday was a prime example of what it's going to be like for me when this, and if you choose to do this. I have nothing between me and the solar fields, nothing. A 6-foot fence, I already have. It doesn't help. I have a 6-foot fence around my home within my yard. What's it going to do for me a half a mile away? Nothing. Most of us that live in Boron live there because we choose that. We chose that. We love Boron. We love the desert. We enjoy being in the desert. You're taking what little desert we have left around our community and making it solar. Boron should be as important as Bakersfield when you guys are making your decision. We're a small community, but $1 million should not be more important than the community of Boron, our health, and what you guys choose. Are you going to put money for the community?
Would you please bring your comments to a close?
Over what our lives and our community is worth? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Barnard, spelled B-A-R-N-A-R-D. I'm a resident of Boron for over 55 years, and I'm here to oppose the Aratina project because I don't think it was well thought out, and I don't think the way it is now it's going to be considering the best health and other welfare of our citizens. In addition to the valley fever that we've mentioned over and over again, there is also a lot of electromagnetic waves around a solar farm produced by power storage equipment, solar inverters. Such strong waves are very unhealthy to the body. People having electromagnetic hypersensitive get sick quickly when exposed to such conditions as sleep problems, stress, agitation, and there are over 50 health problems associated with these electromagnetic waves, which will be emitted from the solar project. And some of that being seizures and cancer and recurrence of cancer. Now, my biggest question I have here is I've been hearing people talk about how wonderful this is, especially the unions, and I am a former union member from the California School Employees Association. But I'd like a show of hands from all the people who are in favor of this project. Raise your hand if you live in Boron. Exactly. I bet there's not any hands up. if you live in Boron and are in favor of this project, all the union people that are speaking don't live here, and they're only going to be employed for 1 year. A little more, maybe. Yeah, I know unions are great. I was a member of one. And that job is going to be wonderful for a year. But let us not be mistaken. This is not a long-term job for these union people. And I guess the thing that people from Boron just can't wrap their head around is why we get all the bad parts of this and not the good parts of this. Why is this energy being shipped up north when we have to endure having it generated in our front yard? Aratina is amazing. It's like, hold my beer while I kiss your girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? That's about what it's like. And we just are sick of having our intelligence insulted. We get none of the good and all of the bad. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we have our next speaker, please?
Thank you for letting me speak. Dennis McLean, MCLEAN. I live in Bakersfield. I come to the board meetings. I was here when you approved the solar plant out of Rosemont, and I didn't know this was going to come up, but I'm here, and I just had to say something. It seems to me it's corporate America wants to come in and do their thing while the citizens have to kind of step aside and let that do that. I do not agree with that, and I know you guys have families and you have homes that you take care of and you like, so I'm in support of supporting the citizens of Boron. Thank you.
Excuse me, folks. Trying to hear everybody, so go have our next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Supervisors. My name is Brian Holt, BRIAN HOLT. I'm Business Manager, Financial Secretary of IBEW Local 428. We're the Electrical Workers Union for Kern County. On behalf of the nearly 1,000 Kern County residents and their families, we stand in strong support of this project. So it's easy when 8-Minute Energy calls. We have a long, nearly decade-long relationship, track record of everything that they've preached here today. I can stand here and tell you that they followed through on. In fact, Alex was quick to point out the local hire. He stole my thunder on that one, the 80 and 90%. So I can stand here. I ran the numbers before came to this meeting today, and we're right in the middle, 85% local hire for all the projects that we have going on right now. Nearly 700 people right now working on the solar fields in Eastern Kern. I've heard it mentioned today, temporary jobs. So I was born and raised on temporary jobs. My dad worked temporary jobs for 45 years. I'm 25 years into a temporary job career. And we were lucky enough to bring our first year class at apprenticeship today. So don't worry, they're all shy. They're not going to each tell their story. So saved you a bunch of time there. Yeah. But they do. Each of them have a story to tell, and they would not have the opportunity for the career they do without projects like this. So for that very reason, I stand in support of this project and hope you will concur with the recommendation of the Planning Department and approve the project.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Hi, I'm Millie Ashpaugh, ASH-PAUGH. I'm extremely opposed to the Aratina Solar Project 2.0. Boron is a small rural community with a little more than 2,000 people, and the main road through town is roughly 4 miles in length. The proposed solar project would run alongside this main road and will be located less than 700 feet and no more than 1/2 of a mile from our neighborhoods. Within the 5 proposed solar sites, there are 4,722 Joshua trees. Sites 2 and 3 have the largest number of healthy-looking trees in the area for miles. Joshua trees don't grow anywhere else in the world, only in the Mojave Desert. They are part of the desert's ecosystem, providing habitat for numerous birds, mammals, insects, and lizards. The adult trees live 500 years on average. If the Joshua trees are to survive, we must protect their habitat. We should consider saving these rare trees from climate change and from big solar projects. Killing almost 5,000 Joshua trees, the desert, to save the desert makes no sense. Joshua trees are currently a candidate to be added to the endangered list. The Fish and Game Commission should make a decision on this by the end of the year. The Aratina project got an emergency exemption from the Fish and Game Commission to take, AKA kill, these nearly 5,000 Joshua trees because the project was shovel ready. A lawsuit has been filed against the Fish and Game addressing this very issue of emergency take of the trees for certain solar projects. The lawsuit says it violates the mandates of CEQA, among other things. The Kern County case is Pollock versus Fish and Game Commission. In light of the pending litigation against the Fish and Game Commission and the upcoming decision whether to add the Joshua tree to the endangered list, a no vote or a postponement of a vote would be warranted, at least until we know the outcomes of both of these issues. It sounds like CEQA might need to do a more in-depth analysis of the take of the Joshuas and other endangered species. This project should, at a minimum, be deferred until the impacts have been more adequately studied. I realize that we live 2 hours from this county seat, our county seat.
Ma'am, could you bring your comments to a close, please?
We have very little voting power, but I implore you to do the right thing for the people that actually live in the area and that would be most affected by this project. Please vote no, or at least engage our community more in the decision-making so that we can maybe make a compromise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Johnny Cangy, C-A-N-G-E-Y. I am the business agent with the Ironworkers Local 433. I am also on the Planning Commission, sit on an oversight committee for the Centralia School District in my own town. I've been an ironworker for 25 years. I know last time I spoke to you, trades provided an opportunity for my family coming from both Italy and Holland, the opportunities that it gets. So I am a person that comes from part-time jobs, that I've never been out of work. When I was in the field for 21 years, my father was a union iron worker, my grandfather was an operating engineer, so on and so forth, 5 generations. Without these jobs, there is no opportunity. The ironworkers in the last, I know I became a business agent for the last 4.5 years roughly, but I know 5 or 6 years we have brought in people from the area. We have partnered up with the Antelope Valley Youth Build. We have teamed up with the Antelope Valley College, the Fenner Conservation Camp. We have brought people, women, you know, Bernard's one of my guys I would have the first opportunity to give a career to. He had a troubled past. He needed a goal in life to succeed. And ironworkers and these solar projects provided that. I know somebody brought up that Edwards project, Big Bow that's going on right now. Unfortunately, my guys are all working right now. And if we didn't have these opportunities, they would probably be here at the unemployment line. And that's the truth. I respect the community, totally get it. I came from a dairy land, Buena Park. That's where my family came to 60 years ago. I've seen it come from dairy. I've heard the stories. I've seen change in my life. Change is scary, and I totally understand health. But I can honestly say our developers do a hell of a job. 8 minutes, definitely recognized for protecting my guys. I don't know of one case that we've had valley fever you'd think my guys would get it. Not one of my guys or any one that I know since I've been an agent roughly 5 years ago that we've gotten. It's constant watering. There's gravel. There's is that sod or wood or whatever that is. I'll tell you guys, I go out there, it's definitely protected, and I know when the winds get too bad, we stop jobs immediately. And I do know there is repercussions. If guys do make a mistake, that dust is major on these jobs. I speak on behalf of my guys. My major obligation is to protect my guys, so I know damn well I would never let my guys be in effect because of the wind.
Yes,
and
sir.
two, guys, you know, common sense, point A, point B, more of a barricade.
Could we get you to bring your comments to an answer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I did go over. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate
Thank
it. Next speaker, please.
Hi, you guys. Thank you for being here today and hearing all of our opinions. I'm not a professional speaker. I don't get paid for this being here today. Union guys are here.
Sir, I'm
Rob-
sorry to interrupt you, but could we just get your name real quick?
My name's Rob Ashpaugh, Ashpaugh.
Thank you.
The union guys back here behind us is probably getting a $50 subsistence day pay. Most of us came down here taking money out of our pockets, asking you guys to protect a little town named Boron, California. Don't put big energy on our backs and let us be the stepping stone. This has never been experienced on this type of a measure of solar panels this close to houses. Anywhere you look, you see they're all out in the remote areas. They're not encasing a house development. You guys put this beautiful walkway from Desert Lake to Boron. You walk down, they say, oh, we're gonna put a 6-foot fence in. 6-foot fence only covers your visual 100 yards. The next mile and a half, when you look out, you're gonna see solar panels. They say there's no reflections on their pictures. When you was looking at them, there's reflections coming off of those solar panels. Everything they've said, you can pinpoint and show a different view. We're asking you guys to look at it with open eyes. We're going to be affected by it. Our town's going to be affected by it. I came from a union family. I belong to a union. I retired from unions. I started off at Local 220 right out of Bakersfield here. I worked hard to get where I'm at today. I am invested in Boron. You guys, it's going to kill us. Our property's going to drop down to nothing. Also, it's God's land, His trees, His forest that He created. We're asking you guys to protect it. Help to save the birds, the animals, and remember, I can't even say, it is a disaster to happen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Hello, my name is Bianca Lopez, Biancalopez, and I am a union member of the Ironworkers Local 433. I'm hoping that you guys will approve of the project because this is going to be able to provide for me and my family. I understand that these jobs are temporary and, you know, yes, we come from different places and we're coming from, you know, all over. I admire the desert scenery myself, you know, so I am hoping to actually find a home out here for myself so that I can enjoy the rest of what you guys are enjoying as well. So anyway, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys listening to everyone's wishes, whether approved or not approved. Thank you for hearing us out, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Hello, my name is Anthony Osby, A-U-S-B-I-E, and I am the training director for the Kern County Electrical Apprenticeship. The amount of solar work that we've had over these past 7 years or so has allowed us, our program, to accept far more apprentices than we would have been able to without it. These apprentices start in our program making a really good wage. They earn great medical benefits and retirement. And at the end of that 5-year program, they're state certified journeyman electricians, and they end up having a long-lasting career. Also, these projects take a lot of people to build, so we're able to employ, this year alone, hundreds of alternative classifications. And these are people from the local community who came to us with, maybe they were unemployed or working low-paying jobs. They had no experience, and we put them on these projects at the same wage and medical benefits that our apprentices make. And they gain exposure to a construction industry that they may not otherwise have been able to. And they gain experience in the electrical industry that they can take with them long after these projects end. So for those reasons, I'm in support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Chairman Peters, members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is John Spalding, representing the Kern County Building Trades Council. That's JOHN-SPAULDING. Behind me are the members of the Building Trades Affiliates who are here to show their support for this project by 8 Minute Energy. The Aratina Solar Project is 530 megawatts of renewable electric project and 600 megawatts of energy storage. We're asking that you approve staff's recommendation and certify the environmental impact report and approve the conditional use permits. There has been a thorough and credible study submitted on behalf of this project, and you should be comfortable in relying on that information and recommendations before you. Once again, we are hopeful for the opportunity for the construction jobs for our members, Kern County residents. We are looking forward to offering the opportunity for those who may want to pursue a construction career through apprenticeship. As a longtime resident of Kern County, I know that we can definitely use the benefits of such a project. Both our members and the county itself should look forward to this addition to our clean energy efforts that we have been building, both wind, solar, and now energy storage. Again, please approve staff's recommendation and certify the environmental impact report. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon. Randy Wetmer, Ironworkers Local 416. Last name W-E-T-M-U-R. 30-year member of Ironworkers Local 416. I've worked on everything out here in this area from the 58 interchange in Barstow to the 395, 58 interchange over in Kramer Junction. Numerous wind farms up in Jawbone, Mojave. A few solar farms north of California City. I'm here in full support of this project. Being able to work in the area where I chose to buy a house, it's nice to be able to come home instead of drive 3-4 hours from LA every day. The work that we get trained to do on these jobs, first thing we do on the job, we get there, we're trained what not to do. We always have to be on the lookout for our precious resources, such as the trees. Them are always usually fenced off. The desert tortoise we're always looking forward to. Very rarely find them here with the wind, but you know, with the wind factor, coming home over the years, you see a big cloud of dust coming. Well, part of that is we're right next to California City too. We have numerous vehicles, maybe 20 to 25,000 people that come out on a big weekend. And with the off-road vehicles, they're kicking up more dust than this solar project would probably kick up in its lifetime of 30 years. So I ask you to take consideration, vote yes on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please? Excuse
Hi.
me, ma'am, I think you've already spoke on this.
Yes, I have.
Okay, well, this was one time for people to come up and speak. We're trying to give everybody a chance to come up and address the board.
I understand that.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. John Adams, John-A-D-A-M-S. Thank you. I'm the district representative for the operating engineers here in Bakersfield. I represent about 880 members, 80 of those being apprentices. So I'd like to just hit on the fact that these projects and 8 Minute Energy, they're great to work with, and these projects are helping us build the future construction workers that we need, right? We put a lot of apprentices to work on these projects. And to add to that, not to be repetitive, but our jobs are construction. Our job is to work ourselves out of a job. So kind of repeating what these guys have already said, but we need another job to go to when we're done with this project or the unemployment line grows, right? But that is our job as construction, is to work ourselves out of a job. So with that, obviously Local 12 would support the project and hope you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Hello, thank you. My name is Monique Flores, F-L-O-R-E-S. I'm from Edwards Air Force Base, representing the 412 Test Wing. With no data collection to determine if these type of man-made structures at the short distances from the radar scene would possibly impact testing, the proposed solar array, Site 3, 4, and 5, could possibly interfere and degrade SAR or SAR maps collected at the Rich Spur array. The proposed sites are just outside the normally mapped area, but are close enough that their expected returns would be large enough to bleed into maps through the Doppler sidebands. The array is used for point target response verification, so the surrounding area within 2.5 miles needs to be undisturbed desert terrain. The specific area within the Edwards boundary Rich Spur array was chosen after careful consideration. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman sent field engineers out to survey the land. They looked for the vicinity of man-made structures because they wanted to be away from it. Looked for the lack of rolling hills and obstructions due to hills or rock formations. If this plan was to go forward, they would possibly need to relocate the reflector array, resurvey, retest to establish a new baseline for both the F-22 and F-35 efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have our next speaker, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Jennings, Jennings, and I just wanted to point out to you that right before the meeting, we got this support comments package, and I was looking through it, and I could only find 19 letters from people of Boron that are in support of this project. All the rest of these are from Bakersfield, Delano, Shafter, Wasco, Tehachapi. None of them are going to be affected by this project other than jobs. So all these other ones here are all about me. We want you to be all about us. It's our community, and we want you to take into consideration what we want for our community. And we'd also like to ask the question of where the water's going to come from for this project. We haven't gotten an answer on that, so we would appreciate an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
I'm Gloria Moore. My name is spelled M-O-O-R-E. And I want to speak on behalf of the community of Boron. We have children there, we have elderly people there whose health will be impacted by this project. We're not opposed to the unions, we're not opposed to solar projects. We are opposed to having it in our community, and what we're asking is that this project could be moved 6 miles away from our town so that we're not affected by it in this way. I recently was diagnosed with a lung condition. I have nodules in my lungs, and I know numerous other people in Boron who have issues with breathing, with asthma, with lung problems, COPD, and we're just asking that you move this project farther away from our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
I guess if my wife could come up here, I can too. So. My name is Daniel Moore, spelled the same way, M-O-O-R-E. I have been in the high desert. I was raised in Lancaster. I spent 63 out of 70, almost 73 years in the high desert, 16 in Boron. I wanted to point out something that Mrs. Richardson and Mr. Richards pointed out about valley fever. There's a little thing I found, not just one, but a number of different things on the internet relating to the construction. And believe me, I'm not against any union workers. I admire all of you for what you do. Let's see. Valley fever, coccidioidomycosis, a respiratory infection spread by fungal spores, etc., diagnosed in 28 workers at 2 San Luis Obispo solar project construction sites, and so forth and so on. And this is not just one, but a number of different reports I read online, just in one search. So valley fever is endemic to the high desert and to this valley too, for that matter, much of the Southwest. And it's only fatal in 1 or 2% of the cases. But we have a friend in Lancaster years ago who had systemic coccidioidomycosis, and he died of it eventually. My own cousin had it, so it's not a negligible thing. I think yesterday a good example of the dust problem was demonstrated quite forcefully. So I'll put it to you very simply, guys. As I said, I have no opposition to union workers. I admire them and they need jobs. But what it comes down to in your vote is either jobs or boron. So look at it that way, Zach. Jobs or boron, one or the other, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have our next speaker, please?
Hello, Supervisors. My name is Russell Lamb, LAMB. I represent the operating engineers. We represent approximately 1,500 members in Kern County. With that, there's 80 apprentices. John spoke earlier about that. We are in favor of the solar project, absolutely. Before I became an operating engineer, I did a little electrical work myself, and I actually installed solar panels on my mom's house. She has 100 panels on her house. They're actually on arrays similar to what these are, but they're in the backyard on the same kind of thing, arrays. I've heard members or citizens talk about heat increase and all that. I mean, she hasn't seen that, and I think on 100 solar panels on the back of a house, you'd see that. The dust is going to blow, whether we do the project or not. The dust is still going to blow. So, anyway, the motorcycles. They're talking about disturbing the land, right? So, the residents ride their motorcycles in that desert, right? The desert is getting broken up. The crust is getting broken. There's still going to be dust. Either there's going to be dust whether you have this project or not. So with that, I'm going to close. And like I said, we stand with the electrical workers and the iron workers in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, hey, we're respectful to everybody that's up here speaking, so please, unless you're up here addressing the board, we don't need any comments. So our next speaker, please.
Hi. My name is Tim Lukes. I work for Muroc Unified School District, have for the last 33 plus years. Been a union guy most of my life. My dad worked out at the borax plant for over 30 some years. One thing I'd like to ask all you, would you like to have this in your front yard? You know, it's not pretty. We don't want all this dust, a big block wall right in front of our house. We like our little piece of desert. The pictures that have been on the screen don't really depict the amount of Joshua trees that are in this area. And sure, this company wants to give $1.4 million to help preserve some Joshua trees. They're not within Kern County, I bet. It's not going to do anything for Kern County. I don't think you're going to make very much money out of this compared to the health hazards that it could cause us. Let's see, one of the other things. Anyways, you know, I don't want to put anybody out of work. There's plenty of other good pieces of property that don't have the vegetation and life forms that are on this particular piece of property. Not to mention just kind of fencing us all into a smaller area than we already live in, trapped between air base and a borax mine. And now you want to take the last couple of miles of pristine desert that we have, full of plant life, beautiful flowers in the springtime. There's a certain amount of protected animals out there. You know, let's talk about Joshua trees. You can put $1.4 million into helping preserve some trees, but at my place of employment, when I started there, I was out chopping weeds, and we had one that was about this tall, just starting out, baby Joshua tree. Now, after 33 years, it's about 2 feet over my head. You know, $1.4 million don't replace 1,000-year-old trees. Just don't happen. You know, pine trees, they come back up and they grow sky high fast. Joshua trees grow this much a year. So, you know, it's just not a great thing for any of us to really have when there's plenty of other places right up the 58, be even closer for these union guys to work at in Mojave, where you put in the freeway bypass.
So if you could please bring
and
your
there's
comments
plenty
to a
of graded
close.
property to put it on right there. And there's no houses within miles and miles of the place, right next to Mojave Airport. Still in Kern County. Kern County get their money. Their unions that get their money. Everybody be happy.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hey, please refrain from cheering, booing. Just let people get through their presentations. Can we get our next speaker, please?
Hi, my name's Allison Kapusta. That's K-A-P-U-S-T-A. I'm a resident of Boron, and I know the solar industries are wonderful, and like everyone else has said, I do not like the fact it's cutting our town in half, and it's going to endanger our children. I'm an employee of the Muroc School District, so I know how great unions are. But there are so many other areas that these could be laid that aren't affecting the lives and, you know, the playgrounds of our children. But one that upsets me, Aratina Solar, I believe, is very successful. I just don't like how they've been very sneaky with us Boronites. The fact that many people were never even informed about the idea over a year ago. It seemed like most of us who did hear that this was all planning are property owners, but renters did not hear. Many of the other people that didn't live within a mile of the areas they planned on using were never even informed that these solar plants wanted to come in. Not till the very last minute when they had our gathering over at the VFW. And then it was quite interesting because many of us had many questions and the representatives were there, had more questions that they could not answer other than the ones in which they could. So why didn't they send the big bosses who know everything that could have answered our questions instead of the newly hired employees that were very grateful to have a job? And they were all very kind, very nice people. I liked the people we spoke to, but they didn't have answers to the questions that we, the Boronites, whose town is going to be demolished, our children's playgrounds are taken away, and our lives are being endangered, the questions that we ourselves had. And the other one, I know they passed a little newsletter about donations they made. I found out the truth. They'd snuck in they had this planned over 2 years and started buying up the land of Boron before they ever even informed us that this was going to be done. Now, to me, that's like sneaking in the back door. It seems to me like they're as crooked as the Tennessee River. Why couldn't they have just faced us head on and been honest?
Thank you. Can we have our next speaker, please?
Hello, my name is Nancy Smith, S-M-I-T-H, and a Boron resident. I own the Desert Lake Apartments, which is 60 units. I'm closest to Site 3, which is about 500, 600 feet from the proposed solar panels. And it seems to me that in this room, we have those who are going to benefit financially from it, those who are going to be protected from the valley fever by AB 203. And I was just wondering for a show of hands of the workers who are protected or who do they even know what AB 203 is?
Okay, ma'am, this is just a conversation with the board right now,
Anyway,
please.
and the third category is us who are the sufferers from the consequences of the plant going in, and that's going to be us in Boron. I know that there's been lots of pros and cons today, and I just wish that you all would take in consideration that it's going to encompass our entire town. A third of our vacant land is going to be comprised of new solar panels. And I'm worried about respiratory issues. A lot of people in Boron, most of us, have swamp coolers, and the swamp coolers suck in the existing outside air, and it helps cool off our apartments and homes during the hot months. And I'm worried about our property values, and I'm worried about the new rodents with all the displacement of their homes, that now it's going to come in and affect the people of Boron and my property. And who's going to help us with this situation? We're looking for you all to help save our community. And please take in consideration our concerns. And I ask that you have a continuance or explore our concerns and have them move the panels away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers that would like to provide comments? Okay. Seeing none, I'll now bring it back to the board for questions or comments, and I'll start with Supervisor Scrivener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This project's in my district, so I'm happy to go first. First of all, I want to thank all the speakers who came here today. Your comments were excellent, and I know that all the board members took them to heart, whether you were pro or con when it came to this project. I want to turn to our planning director, Ms. Oviatt, to address some of the comments that were made to the extent that she feels it necessary to do so based on the notes that she's taken. I have some issues that I made notes about that I want to tackle as well. And so, Ms. Oviatt, I think I'll give you an opportunity to address what you want to, and you may, I'm sure, touch on quite a few of the things that I have jotted down, and then whatever's left over, I'll come back in and we can talk about that. So please proceed.
Thank you, Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair. So first of all, I'd like to address the fencing off of dirt roads. If those dirt roads are public access easements, they will not be fenced off. And if they are not public access easements, but they are accesses that the public has been using, I assure you that the fire department can break through any fence they need to for emergency services, as the fire department has explained to me. But if those are public access easements, even though they're dirt, 8-Minute Energy cannot fence them off. So it's the first comment I'd like to make.
Let me stop you right there. Maybe I just gave you an open runway, but I'm going to renege on that just a little bit. I apologize. And so, and I may butcher this name, and I'm so sorry, but it was something along the lines of Mr. I think it was Tizzo or something like that. I'm so sorry if I got it wrong, but I will assure you that my name gets butchered all the time. My last name, that is. So that was the concern for the residents of South Boron being able to traverse, I think, the railroad tracks if there was a train that was parked there for an emergency vehicle coming through, but also an emergency that they may have, or just getting to work. And so is that the comment that you're addressing?
It is, Supervisor
Okay.
Scrivener.
And there were two individuals that I think spoke to that. And so is there a way for us to look where this would be on the map and see if we can identify any of the dirt roads that may or may not be fenced or blocked?
Well, we can show you the dirt roads. We haven't confirmed that they're public access easements, but no one has, 8-Minute is not requested to vacate any public access easements.
Okay, so there's no vacations.
There's
as
no
it stands.
vacations before your
Okay,
board.
very good. Okay, please proceed.
I wanted to address the Joshua trees. The statement that 4,722 is taken from the original EIR. That analysis was done and was not based on the redesign. 430 Joshua trees will be preserved because they are now in these larger setbacks. The California Environmental Quality Act was done through this project. So whatever the case that has been brought that involves this project with the California Fish and Game Commission has now been kind of overrun by the fact that we did a project-specific environmental impact report. Your board has not been included in that lawsuit. That lawsuit, we weren't even aware of that lawsuit. That lawsuit has no effect on this particular environmental impact report or the ability of this applicant to go to Fish and Game to ask for an incidental take permit. They need to provide evidence to us that they have an incidental take permit before they can take down the Joshua trees. So we will be reviewing that incidental take permit for compliance. The issue of heat island, we've addressed that on page 30 of your staff report, as well as in the EIR. There is no evidence based on the science of the reports that we have referenced that there is a raise in the ambient temperature from a solar project. So that is on page 30. There was a question about water. When you have completed all of your questions, Mr. Murphy and I have 2 mitigation measures that we would like to amend for your consideration. I can do that now, or I can wait and see if there are other mitigation measures that we would be amending.
Go ahead and tackle the water issue. That was one of the notes that I made as well. And so let's go ahead and address that at this time, and then you can come back and do any other adjustments as we need to.
So we'd like to amend mitigation measure 4.3-2, which is in air quality, but it does read right now, 4.3-2A in the mitigation monitoring program, Exhibit C. All soil being actively excavated or graded shall be sufficiently watered to prevent excessive dust. Watering shall occur as needed with complete coverage of disturbed soils areas. Watering shall take place a minimum of 3 times daily where soil is being actively disturbed, unless dust is otherwise controlled by rainfall or use of a dust suppressant. We are recommending you add the wording, prior to issuance of any grading or building permit, evidence of authorization to use on-site wells and any limits on pumping shall be provided from the Antelope Valley Water Master, managed by the Antelope Valley East Kern Water District, parenthesis AVEK, AVAC, or other water provider. So while the applicant has proposed to use an on-site well, this is an adjudicated basin, and they need evidence from the Antelope Valley Water Master that they can pump water from that well for this use, or they need to go off-site, even outside Boren, and truck in water. But like all our solar projects, we need a will serve letter and evidence of where the water's coming from so that we can guarantee that there will be water provided for this project. The other proposal was a question that was raised in regards to the installation of the barrier. We thought that was a good comment, and I would like to have Mr. Murphy amend our barrier so that we can ensure that the barrier is actually up before they start bringing panels on and traversing the site. That starts to increase the amount of dust that could be created. So if Mr. Murphy would read that into the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Oviatt. Members of the board, the mitigation measure that we would propose to amend is 4.3-4. The entire text of that amendment is actually on page 7 of your addendum staff report. So the first 3 quarters would all stay the same. It talks about prior to issuance of building, grading permits, that they have to have the 6-foot wall fence. Right up into where it says a copy of the final design plans shall be provided to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Then what we would read is the language would say, the approved barrier, and then it would say, for each individual conditional use permit site shall be fully installed prior to the commencement of any construction activities for that corresponding site. And then we would propose deletion of the last inspection by the Kern County Public Works. And the purpose of that would then make it to where if I was going to do any construction on Site 2, and Site 2 had a fence, that fence would have to be constructed before any grading or construction activity took place on related to the panels or anything else. So this way, with this revised mitigation measure, anywhere that they are constructing a fence, that barrier needs to be constructed first before any other activity commences on that site.
Very good, and that was an excellent comment, and I'm glad that you addressed it. That's one of the items that I wanted to as well.
Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, if I also may clarify, however, if there is minor grading, we'd just like to have it on the record here. If there's minor grading that they need to do in order to install the fence, they would have dust control measures as they installed the fence before they did the rest of the site.
Does that conclude your comments for now?
It does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great. Thank you so much. So I want to get into the dust issue a little bit more. And I'm not talking about a dust event like we had yesterday. I live in Tehachapi. I can tell you that the dust was terrible yesterday throughout the county. I drove down here in the afternoon. The whole Bakersfield area was just covered in dust. It was flying everywhere. I was down in Los Angeles, same thing. Downtown LA, full of dust. And that's a concrete jungle, and so it's not coming off of solar panels or farmland or anything else for that nature. It was just, yesterday was just, I think, an extraordinary wind event that caused dust just about everywhere. So the kind of dust mitigation and dust issues that I am concerned about are the normal, everyday wind events that we have in the desert. Obviously, we know if you live on the east side of Kern that the spring is going to be a windy time of year. Dust is a bigger issue then, but no matter what time of year, you've got that west-east prevailing wind. I don't know about you folks, but I noticed in the Tehachapi area that about 90% of the time it's coming from the west to the east, and then about the other 10% of the time it might be going the other direction or in a different direction. So when we're looking at the prevailing wind, the fencing, from my opinion, that is up is addressing the prevailing wind and where dust may be coming off the site. But I want to talk more about the studies from the AV Dust Busters and the height of this fence, the effectiveness that we can project from the fence, and then also the measures that are taken to address any migrating dust that may be coming off the property. So can we just talk a little bit more, Ms. Oviatt, as far as why are we requiring these particular mitigations, and why do we believe that they're going to be effective in a normal kind of wind event or even a relatively high wind event, not something like we saw yesterday, but something much more in the normal?
Supervisor Scribner, these are based on our years of experience with the solar projects that we've done. However, I will defer to Mr. Glenn Stevens, who has the management and monitoring and experience, and who did institute the first in California commercial solar special permit for dust. So I would defer to him.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens is our Air Pollution Control Officer for the East Kern Air Pollution Control District. I serve on that board along with Chairman Peters and a few other elected officials from other incorporated cities in Eastern Kern. So Mr. Stevens, would you come down to the microphone and you can talk to us about your dust mitigation permitting and what's required, and also your enforcement actions that you take. I know that I've called you several times about dust events that have occurred that I've seen, and I know that you get a lot of calls from citizens as well as officials from throughout the county.
Yes, we do. We got calls yesterday in regards to the dust happening yesterday. Although there's very little we can do about something like that where there's really high winds. In terms of solar facilities, we do implement, I have the solar facility implement dust mitigation plans to obviously mitigate the dust, including installing wind fences, obviously watering, there's the soil, and other mitigation measures. Now, what exactly that you like to hear?
Well, I think I'd like to know, and these folks would probably like to know the process. So say this project is approved and you have a wind event and there's dust that would be migrating off the property. What happens?
Well, normally we do an investigation. We go to the site and see dust leaving the site. We obviously ask the people if they're working to stop working, and we also levy fines to those sites that aren't compliant with dust control measures.
What's your fine schedule look like? I mean, is there first offense, second offense, those kinds of things? Right. They escalate?
Yes, they escalate. $5,000 up to, we issue fines up to $15,000 and sometimes even more. Okay. So it's an ongoing process. We have staff members that go out to the facilities on a regular basis and do site surveys to make sure that they aren't causing dust problems.
Do any of the members of the board have any questions for Mr. Stevens, or I'll move on? If so, we'll call you back up. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Ms. Oviatt, clearly valley fever has been an issue that has been brought up several times by various speakers. And so we addressed that issue within our documents. I would just say we know that valley fever, it exists. It's prevalent in the southwestern part the U.S. We have in California, Arizona, et cetera. It's here in the valley. It's in the desert. And so that is, is something that we will have to address strictly through our dust mitigations. But can you speak to that to an extent that you think is relevant at this time?
Certainly when the large-scale solar project started in approximately 2011, we consulted with public health. As you know, Kern County is an expert on valley fever. Public health indicated that based on the studies, as a reminder, the spores remain dormant until there's moisture. The actual spores don't always occur in the soil. And when we have a lengthening drought, it's true that at some point after it rains, that season, they have more valley fever. The previous public health director, Matt Constantine, actually did, for the years 2012 to 2018, an analysis to see if the solar projects actually increased the number of cases in Eastern Kern, and he found no scientific correlation with that. Certainly, the drought, and then we get rain, and then we have a drought again, interferes with that. But the causality was actually, your board actually asked him to look to see, were the solar projects directly related to an increase in valley fever cases, and based on the places. The second thing that public health and Mr. Constantine, who participated before his retirement in us designing our sections of our EIRs, which is found on page 4.3-16, notes that if you've lived in Eastern Kern for many, many years, you've either had a mild case or you didn't get a mild case. The reason that they are more protective of people who are actually working directly with the soil is that many of those people, as the boron people have noted, don't live here. It is more prevalent for people who first come to the valley, and Eastern Kern, as noted on that page, 4-3-6, sorry, I apologize, 16, has a lower incidence of valley fever than the valley portion of where we are now. And that has gone up slightly because of the influx of people who came for work during the recession. We were one of the few places in the Antelope Valley where we had 23% unemployment rate, and we actually had solar projects. So all of that information has been included. We are asking your board to do an override. There is no way for us to guarantee that people will not get valley fever. However, there are incidences of valley fever now that are just related to living in Eastern Kern or living in the valley, this valley of Kern County.
Thank you, Ms. Oviatt. Staying in the vein of health and safety, I wanted to see if you can speak to the concern of that was brought up of electromagnetic waves, any kind of electromagnetic waves that may be emanating from the solar projects. That was brought up as a concern. Have we addressed that?
We have page 4-9-5 of the environmental impact report, and all our environmental impact reports and wind projects includes an analysis of EMF. Congress has determined that EMF is not a reason that you can stop, for example, a cell tower. Congress has done extensive studies on EMF. The California Public Utilities Commission has also done extensive studies. There's no evidence of the types of ailments and other sorts of diseases that you heard today. We respectfully understand that people may believe that, but we are constrained by the science that we are given, and we have analyzed it in the environmental impact report.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to some of the traffic issues. And Mr. Pope, Craig Pope is our Public Works Director. I'd like to ask Craig Pope to come up. First of all, I want to also thank, I'm sorry, I'm looking for your name. I want to make sure I get it right. But it was the PowerPoint that we had that talked about some of the traffic issues. And so I think what I wanted you to speak to, if you could, was some of the traffic issues that were brought up in regard to traversing the railroad tracks and by site 3, and I know you don't have it in front of you, site 3 and site 2, but essentially we're talking about traffic going across the railroad tracks, then also some of the pedestrian crossing and the school bus traffic for kids going to and from school. And so has your department has looked at this project and have tried to identify any issues that you have seen?
Yes, we have, through the chair to Supervisor Scribner, but they did not bring it to my attention, this concern of the train being there, so that was a new topic for me today also.
Okay, as far as the road vacations were concerned, but what about specifically some of the construction traffic that would occur while the project is being built? What did your department identify as far as issues for the construction traffic and how that may or may not impact safety when it comes to local traffic, school traffic, et cetera?
We didn't see anything from what we were able to analyze that would indicate that there would be a problem with construction traffic. That is, there are always temporary slowdowns. There are always momentary day-to-day issues on any kind of construction project, but we really analyze a project based on what kind of traffic is there after it is completed, unless we see a really big spike, and in this case, we didn't.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pope. I appreciate that. And it was Mr. Richards. I apologize. I've got a lot of notes here, several pages, and so it took me a minute to identify that. I thank you for putting this together because I think you raised a lot of really good points. Okay, so as far as the dust and the public health issues, et cetera, what about the question about the ambient temperatures being raised? Can you address that, Ms. Obiat?
I can. Supervisor Scribner, the chair, I also wanted to point out that at the request of Mr. Pope's Public Works, we have included mitigation measure 4.14-1, which requires a very comprehensive construction traffic control plan, and part of that control plan would also address the kinds of delays that could be caused by the railroad crossing. So there is an extensive one-page everything, including timing, including shutdowns, including coordination with District 9 for 58. So there is a mitigation measure that, there are a number of mitigation measures that address a traffic control plan, and that must be done prior to issuance of any construction or building permits, and we could add grading permits if you would like us to.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the heat island,
thank you.
as noted on page 30 of your staff report, and in the EIR, we did look at the heat island effect. So the EIR provided that analysis on 4.9-6 under hazards. Solar panels store less heat than the Earth because of their composition, and they're surrounded by airflow, and therefore they dissipate heat more quickly than when you compare them to solid Earth. Obviously, the Earth retains heat as the sun comes down in eastern Kern. Energy-consuming devices such as the inverters have marginal amounts of waste heat. So the EIR had researchers at Columbia, Brookhaven National Lab, we had models with field data, and we had the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. There was nothing in the studies to date that would indicate a significant increase in ambient air temperatures. This question has come up. Many of the larger solar projects, such as Antelope Valley Solar, which is one of the largest in California, owned by Berkshire Hathaway, has actually done some studies on this and concluded, they've been in operation for many years, have concluded that there's no change in the ambient heat from the fact that there's a solar project there.
Thank you, Ms. Obiat. So just to take a little step back here, this is the process that we go through as the county whenever we have a development project in regard to looking at the impacts of the project. And those are impacts that we can anticipate ourselves. These are issues and impacts that we have seen in other projects, and so they're addressed. And then those impacts that are brought up from members of the community that we address as well. The things that we are unable to address as much when it comes to an EIR to help guide our decisions are things like how it's going to impact my view, or how is it going to impact the character of a community. That was a concern when this project first came forward, the first iteration of the project, and this is the version of the project that the planning department said, look, we're not going to be able to support this project. It's too close to the community. It's going to be impactful on the character of the neighborhoods, et cetera. And I would say from my vantage point that that 8-minute listened to those concerns, and they made significant adjustments by the setbacks of a half a mile, a third of the mile from some of these communities. But one of the things that 8-minute isn't going to be able to address if the project is going to be built is how this project is going to impact the visuals of the desert property that is to the south of Desert Lake, or is to the south and to the west of the community of Boron. The Joshua trees, I think we've addressed that exhaustively. Any construction that occurs in this area, I would say the construction that occurred when your homes were built or when the businesses were built. Joshua trees were removed. Now we have a new status as far as they're concerned. This company has been permitted to remove the Joshua trees, and then there's property that's set aside elsewhere in Kern County to mitigate for that, where those trees will be protected with an easement. And that's the 1.4 million, or at least part of that. When I think about comments like this is going to be in our backyard, this is our desert, et cetera, I absolutely understand your concern and your frustration and how that, in your view, in your mind, is going to impact your view. But the thing that I have to keep coming back to is the view that you're enjoying, the desert that you claim as your own, the desert that your children play in, et cetera, with all due respect, is someone else's property that they've been paying taxes on for years and years and years, presumably. The project site just to the south of the Desert Lake community is zoned industrial. That site could have had a warehouse on it, or a factory, or it could have had some heavy machinery operation that could have been sited there. The fact that it's been vacant land for this long is just basically because of certain market pressures and market motivations for people to develop it or not develop it. The rest of it is zoned agricultural, and so I think that we have to be careful about talking about this is my backyard, this is our desert, et cetera, when someone else owns the property and they're looking to monetize that investment by selling it to a developer that wants to come in and do something with it. And with the adjudication that occurred in the area of all of Eastern Kern, the prospects of having a lot of new housing that would go in, it's very, very unlikely because of the water constraints. One thing that solar does provide is a development opportunity that is not water intensive once you get past the construction phase of that. And so I look at how are the impacts of this project affecting the community? What has been done to mitigate those impacts? And I think when we look at the setbacks, when we look at the fencing, the direct impacts to the community have been mitigated. The things that we can't mitigate are how that impacts your view, how that impacts your ability to go out onto that property that, bear in mind, is owned by someone else, but folks have been enjoying it, riding their motorcycles on it, going out hiking, walking, et cetera, et cetera. But now we have a situation where a developer has come along, the properties have been sold, and they're wanting to develop it. And so I'm sure if any one of us had a piece of property that we wanted to develop, and someone else said, I don't want you to because I've been enjoying the view on your property, we would have an issue with that. And so that's essentially where I am on this project right now, is that the applicant and our planning department has done the best they can to mitigate the impacts, and now we're talking about private property that someone is requesting to develop. And I believe that exhausts all of the questions and concerns that I wanted to address. And so, having said all that, at this time, I would entertain a motion, proposed motion from the planning director based on approval of the project with any adjustments that you think that we have to make. And unless some of my colleagues have questions or concern, I'd be prepared to make a motion for approval.
I actually did have just one question. A couple people had mentioned housing values of their homes decreasing near solar projects, and they said that had happened elsewhere. Do we know of any data or have any evidence of homes that have declined in value in similar areas that you're aware of?
This question has been brought to the planning department. We continue to look for such reports. We have found no evidence of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Okay. Seeing none, Ms. Oviatt, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Certainly, the recommendation is to certify the environmental impact report, adopt revised section 15091 findings of fact and section 15093 statement of overriding considerations, adopt revised mitigation measure monitoring program, adopt resolutions, recommended findings, and enact ordinances approving zone changes as recommended by staff, adopt resolutions and recommended finding, approving conditional use permits in accordance with recommended conditions as recommended by staff, adopt resolutions and recommended findings, approving amendments to the circulation element of the Kern County General Plan as recommended by staff, and approve the memoranda of understanding agreement and authorize the Board of Supervisors chairman to sign. This recommendation includes in the revised mitigation measures the 2 changes that were read into the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oviatt. So moved.
Thank you, Supervisor Scribner. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, our last item today is item 10 under the Public Works Department. This is an update on the cost and impact to Kern County due to implemented state legislation, Senate Bill 1383, which requires jurisdictions like the county to achieve state mandated climate goals, including meeting state organic waste diversion goals. And for that, we will hear from our director, Craig Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And here I thought they were all here to hear this topic. This item before you today is an information only. The only action we're looking is to receive and file. It is a very important operation because it will probably lead to increased costs in the land use fee and increased cost in the hauling fee of garbage. In other words, it costs more to do business in the garbage world coming up. This item is about the costs and impacts of state legislation, Senate Bill 1383. Again, this is state legislation that has been brought to us and has just handed to us. It was finalized November 2020, so it's been about a year ago that it was finalized. It's supposed to take effect come January of 2022, but there more on that later at the end of the presentation. The requirement of Senate Bill 1383 is to reduce the disposal landfilling of organics by 50% by 2022 and 75% by 2025. The state estimates 40% of material currently disposed at a landfill is organic. We concur. We have done our own tests, and about 40% of what we're putting in the landfill is organic. And organic is derived from living matter. That's just that simple. Grass, brush, food, trees, paper, cardboard, that's all this type of thing that we see in our garbage stream that is considered organic. We're not supposed to bury that anymore. And the biggest trick on that whole thing is going to be the food, we think. So our goal is to produce an implementation plan that meets the requirements of the legislation and coordinates with the incorporated cities. We're trying to make it cost effective, both for the land use fee, gate fee, bin fee, for the hauling cost, and balance facility costs. In other words, we have our operations and we have hauling cost. We can decrease our operations, but that'll drive up the hauling costs and vice versa. So we're trying to keep it balanced. We also want a plan that's easy to use. In other words, we don't want the public to have to figure this out. It should be seamless for them. Implementation, really what we're trying to do is separate the organics from the rest of the waste stream. We're going to expand the 3 container system. Currently, there's a lot of mandatory collection area that has 3 cans. We're going to increase the mandatory, again, by the direction from the state, we're going to increase the mandatory collection area. We're also looking at a possible 1 container system. In other words, all of it, a limited amount because it looks very expensive. All waste in a single container, and then you do additional processing on it. Step 1 is collection. Residential and commercial source separated 3 containers. In other words, we are asking the residents and businesses to separate it out into 3 containers. That's the first step, and we can make great headway in that. And then we'll have the 3 cans as we are used to. The gray, black, tan is for disposal, green for composting, blue for recycled materials. Transportation. Now the haulers will get involved and they will be picking up the gray, black, tan, and they will be taken to the landfill as they currently do. And this is all covered under land use fee, gate fee, bin fee. The hauling is actually by the hauler fee. The green is where our costs are going to go up significantly. Currently, the green is thrown into a green can or not. It's depending on whether you're in mandatory collection or not. But in the future, it will be accepted at the same facilities, and then we'll have to process it. We can't just throw it in the landfill anymore. We're going to have to either probably go into some kind of compost type facility, and this will be covered by the land use fee also. Blue will be handled the same way it currently is. It's covered by the garbage hauler fee. The processing, like we say, the gray, black, tan container is going to go into the landfill as normal, except the legislation is limiting what can be placed in the container, and mainly that's a lot of the food and organic material. They're going to say, don't put it in there, put it in the green can is going to be the argument, and they will actually, part of this program is there are lid flippers, people that will go around looking inside the garbage cans. The green container, this is where it gets expensive. Continued acceptance at all county facilities. We're going to be building a shafter compost facility, expected to be open in 2023. We'll also be using Mount Vernon composting facility operated by the city of Bakersfield with agreement with the county of Kern. We pay a considerable sum of money for that operation. And clean compost is marketable. We also will be utilizing private facilities out there that do green waste composting. The amount that we're going to be seeing is going to be more than what we can handle, City of Bakersfield can handle, and we're going to have to be farming some of it out. Blue container is going to be handled by the franchise haulers as it is now, and then the self-haul will be processed at the county facilities. Collection and processing challenges. Multifamily is one of our biggest challenges. Picture yourself a large apartment complex with great big 3-yard bins out there, and they fill up and get hauled away, but all of a sudden we put out 3 cans, a green can, a blue can, a black can, and guess what they do at the apartment complex? They fill it right up with the same garbage in all 3 cans. So it's a challenge. And this high contamination is, we're going to try and do a little more education with them, but this is where we think new technology can come into play. We're looking at different technologies to try and take that single stream, in other words, a mixed garbage from a select bunch of people like commercial and multifamily dwellings, so that they don't have to have 3 great big bins at their location. They can still do one. In other words, we're trying to make it easier for them. How to process organic waste. We have been looking at this since 2018. We actually did request for proposal statements of interest in 2018. We've been at this for a number of years, where we said, how are you doing it? What is everybody else doing? What other technologies are out there? We looked at the proposals. We evaluated the top 3. We actually went and visited these sites and have good thoughts on some of them. Some of them I wouldn't recommend be in the county. They're just not something we want here. But the system cost varied from $20 to $100 million. This is right in line with what Cal Recycle threatened when they first put this out, is they said, you are going to have to build new facilities to meet the goals, and they are going to be expensive. They said somewhere between $20 and $150 million. So what we're seeing is what the industry is proposing out there, and it is fairly expensive. Edible food recovery. Public Works is not the one doing the edible food. It is part of 1383 to try and recover edible food. We're working with the Public Health Department and local jurisdictions to meet the mandates. They're doing a great job, but Public Health has no budget for advertising, and we'll probably be helping them out on that type of thing. Not only advertising, but education, try and get people aware of it and increase the edible food recovery. And how do we fund all of this, and including our waste system? Franchise hauling fees, that's what you're paying the hauler, either through the tax bill or directly. Land use fee, gate fees, bin fees. Land use fee is on your tax roll. Gate fees at the gate. Bin fees is part of if you have a commercial business and what you pay to the hauler that is remitted to us. Occasionally we get a grant, and recycling revenues. In other words, when we're pulling out stuff that can be recycled, we actually make some money on about $1 million a year off of that. What is the land use fee? It is assessed on all occupied residential parcels countywide. And this is something that I want to emphasize. It's all occupied. It's not just the county. We're talking about cities and counties. And how is it collected? It's on the property tax bill. How is it used? Disposal and diversion of most household waste and household hazardous waste. Construction, maintenance, operation of all county-owned waste facilities. All administrative costs associated with state reporting and permitting of the county-owned. And this is really important. We assist the incorporated cities. They all have their own requirements on them, but we help them get through those requirements. And we are the ones that will be generating. When you hear us going to build something, it is not just for the county residents. It is using the land use fee that is paid by everybody for everybody. So the cities are taking advantage of this thing that we're doing. Disposal, these are terms we use, disposal and diversion. Disposal is what finally ends up in the landfill. Diversion is removal of items from the waste stream that are not to be landfilled. For example, grass, brush, food, cardboard, appliances, tires, electronics, metal, mattresses, carpet, glass, plastic, paper, concrete, and wood. What's left is what I'm still trying to figure out, other than styrofoam. That's the only thing we don't have any use for. This slide and the next slide are just to show we are heavily regulated by the state. As a matter of fact, everything we do is regulated by the state in the world of landfills. It started back with AB 1939 and 1989, and it just, there's a dozen, maybe more, of legislation that is what the problem with that, it drives the cost up. Every one of those things, you have to start increasing your costs, and 1383 is the latest one. But you can see that back in 1989, when we started this journey, it was $27.50 a year, 91, 57, 04, 66, so on, up to 2012, 82, 89. And at 2012, we stalled out. And it's because we had enough cash to make it work that we didn't think we should be going after more cash. So we held tight on it. Here we are in 2021. We did an illegal dump fee of $22 a month, so it upped it to $105. In 2022, we're going to propose $180 per year, $15 a month. And why? That's the question. It's to fund our facilities that are needed to meet all the requirements the state is asking us to do. Construct a compost facility at Shafter Wasco, that's running about $20 million. Improve processing facilities at existing sites. The self-haul, I want to talk about self-haul a little bit. Bena, Shafter, 10 million. Transfer station, Tehachapi landfill, 10 million. Increased costs of $2.5 million at Mount Vernon composting. In other words, a city facility there where we're composting, the costs are going up dramatically. We used to see about a $40 a ton cost, and it's up over $60 a ton. New equipment, new technology, and we're talking about some new technology, and that's again to try and help the industry out there where we take a single stream and process it, and just general site maintenance at all the facilities. How do we manage this? The financial impacts? We're striving for a cost-effective solution, and it's a balance between land use fee and hauler cost. The land use fee, we're talking about going from $8.75 to $15 a month, but if we didn't do that, if we didn't increase our costs there, hauling costs are going to have to go up, and I'll get into that. We don't know how much our hauling costs are yet. We're currently negotiating with them, negotiating with the franchise haulers, but we also had a little curveball thrown our way where a big chunk of the haulers are selling to another hauler, so it's right in the middle of negotiations. We don't know what turn that's going to take yet. So what other things can we do to try and keep our costs down? Well, we have a very high level of service that we provide to this county, to our residents here. We operate 7 landfills and transfer stations. We're talking about going to possibly, one of the thoughts was to go to 3 regional facilities, Shafter, Wasco, Bena, Mojave, Roseman. We'd close all the transfer stations, the ones that are up in Lebec, up in Kernville, and then close the landfills of Boron, Taft, Tehachapi, Ridgecrest. We'd close a household hazardous waste facility, a very well-utilized facility that people love, but it is expensive. Eliminate the illegal dumping surcharge we just put on there. Those are all things we could do, but they would have impacts that we have to be prepared for if we were to do it. Impacts would be dramatic hauling costs. In other words, if all of a sudden the hauler up in the Fraser Park area can't just go to the transfer station there, he has to drive all the way down to Bena, your costs are going to go up 3-4-fold. If we close the transfer station up in the Kern River Valley, same thing. Instead of just delivering to the Kern River Valley transfer station, they have to haul it away down to Bena, your costs are going to go up. So by bringing down our operating costs, hauling costs are going up. We're trying to reach a balance. We think we have a good balance of cost. In that balance will be the most cost-effective way of doing it. Also, the negative impacts on environmental issues. If people have to haul too far, they're not going to do it. It's going to get tossed out. That's why we have so many facilities. That's one of our real challenges, that we have a very big county, and we just have to keep a good balance going. Consequences of noncompliance. Cal Recycle is the enforcement body. Fines, you always fear that they're going to drop a fine on you, but it could be much worse than that. They could issue a compliance order, and in other words, they may tell you, you don't get to haul to Bena because it's not set up correctly. You're going to haul up to Fresno or further north. And they can just mandate that at the incredible cost. So we're trying to stay compliant so we can keep doing our business. They can do revocation of use. In other words, our facilities that aren't compliant, they will tell us to shut down. The permits can be revoked. So here we are, fall of 21. It's supposed to be January of 22 when this is supposed to go into effect. SB 619 is now in place. We were kind of counting on it getting in place, but we have to come up with a plan. We have to follow the plan. If so, they'll give us a little additional time, and we're counting on that. We didn't jump the gun, and there are many communities that just went out there at the first hint of this and spent hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, there are example after example Santa Barbara, I think, floated bonds for like $120 million. Things like that, that it's like, we hope we can find a better way of doing this. We don't need debt to do this. We learned a long time ago debt is not the right answer, but we will have to look at a higher rate. We think we have a pretty good plan. We are balancing the hauling cost. We're balancing the facility costs. We're balancing customer needs. I mean, our customers are used to their high-level service. When we first had the pandemic hit us and we said we need to close down a couple facilities, that was not a good thing. I mean, all of a sudden, they just started dumping it out on the streets. We will proceed. Our plan is to proceed with the Prop 218 process to increase the land use fee to $180 per year. We are still negotiating with the haulers to find out what that's going to be. We anticipate their rates will also go up. So we're still seeing some increases in cost, but we're still feeling that we are probably in the lower third of how much it costs to do business throughout the state. So we're not at the very bottom, but we are doing pretty good. And that's a good feat, we think, for the fact that we have such a very large county. It's a very difficult thing. Again, there's a lot of counties that just have one, maybe two landfills, and they don't allow their public there. Well, that'd be a lot easier than what we're doing. But they seem to like their landfills. So with that, I'll ask, are there any questions? Comments? Otherwise, it's a receive and file.
Any questions from the board? Supervisor Couch?
Yeah, I'm going to want to talk to you a lot more about this, but I don't want to belabor it right now. Questions like, well, what if we don't do, what if the 218 is not successful? I know it typically is, but what if it wasn't? What are our options then? Things like that. But I don't want to, it's late in the day and I won't do that today. I'll just make the motion to receive and file. Thank you.
Okay. Second. Thank you. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Having no additional items to consider, I will entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting until Tuesday, October 26th at 2021 at 9 a.m. Thank you. Without objection, we're adjourned.
Sorry, I couldn't resist asking me how it went out there.
If you have recovered from COVID-19, you've developed antibodies in your blood that kill the COVID-19 virus. Your antibodies can be used to strengthen the immune system of others who are battling COVID and need your help to develop antibodies of their own. Your donation at Houchin Blood Bank stays local and can save the lives of people right here in Kern County. Please call now to schedule your donation. It feels good